Welcome back to Paranormal M. It's finally my favorite time again, sitting down and sharing the paranormal experiences you sent in. Thank you so much for your stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest videos on the channel. Now, get comfy, put your headphones on, and let's dive into today's story. So I've told this story a few times online, but I've never really just sat down and told it like I was talking to a friend. So that's what I'm doing with you now. I grew up in eastern Kentucky, in a decent-sized town tucked into the mountains. It's the kind of place where the fog hangs low in the mornings and everybody knows everybody's business. Around here, ghost stories are just part of the landscape. Folks swap them on porches like recipes. Some of them turn into full-on local legends. But this one, my family story, never really made it that far. It mostly just stayed with us. My dad, Mark, grew up way out on one of those back roads that feel like they go on forever. I always tell people, if you've ever seen one of those horror movies where the GPS stops working and the trees seem to close in around you, yeah, that's the kind of place I mean. Old cabins, busted trailers, rusting cars in yards, and every now and then, some abandoned building just sitting there, like it's waiting. Dad was one of 3 brothers. His oldest brother, Doug, died of a heart attack a few years back. His middle brother, my Uncle Ray, is the one this story is really about. Ray passed away from cancer in 2018. Now, Uncle Ray had been kind of distant from the family for a long time. He'd moved around a lot, bigger towns, different counties, never stayed in one place too long. But in 2015, he got diagnosed with a really aggressive form of cancer. Not long after, he called my dad and said he wanted to come back home. He had a new wife, Lisa, and a little girl, Maddie, and he wanted to be closer to family. One evening, out of the blue, he called my dad and said, "I found us a place. It's not far from y'all. Come on out and see it, and bring whatever you can to help us get settled." So we loaded up what we could, an extra mattress, some old chairs, a box of dishes, with the help of our neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, and headed out. We drove for close to an hour, farther and farther away from town. The paved road turned to cracked pavement, then to gravel, then to that kind of road where you start praying you don't meet another car because there's nowhere to pull off. Eventually, we came to this steep gravel driveway that went almost straight up a hill. I mean, it felt like if you let off the gas for half a second, the truck would just slide backwards. There was a drop-off on one side that made my stomach knot up, and dense woods on the other side pressing in. We crawled up that hill, tires slipping on loose rock, and finally made it to the top. That's where the cabin was. It sat right in the middle of the woods like it had grown there. Tin roof, old wood siding gone gray with age, a big rock cliff rising up behind it, and thick trees all around. The place was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, more like the world was holding its breath. I stepped out of the truck and just stood there for a minute. Something felt off. I didn't know what yet, but I felt it in my gut. The driveway formed a rough circle in front of the cabin, and right in the center of that ring was this old, overgrown garden. The kind that used to be pretty once, but had been forgotten. Dead bushes, tangled weeds, a few stubborn flowers trying to hang on. And right there, half sunk into the ground at an angle, was a flat grave marker. I remember stopping mid-step. It was one of those little plaques you see in older cemeteries. I brushed some dirt and grass off with my shoe and read it. It was for a baby, a stillborn son. He died at birth, sometime in the late 70s if I remember right. The family's last name was there too. I went inside after that, still thinking about that little grave, and asked Uncle Ray what was up with it. He shrugged like it was just another odd detail and said, "Came with the place. The folks that lived here before us. They buried him there and just left it when they moved. Landlord said they never wanted it moved. Something about that bothered me more than the marker itself. Just the idea of a family leaving their baby's grave, like they were leaving an old washing machine behind. The inside of the cabin didn't feel much better. It was like the last people had left in a hurry. There were bed frames still in the bedrooms, an old dresser with half the drawers open, piles of clothes stacked on the floor in one room like someone had been packing and then stopped. In one of the smaller bedrooms, there were toys shoved into the closet, and I mean piled in there. Dolls, trucks, stuffed animals, board games with pieces spilling out. It was clearly a kid's room, and it looked like someone had grabbed the kid and left the toys behind. Out back, the yard opened up a bit, right before it hit the tree line and the rock cliff. And there, taking up most of the open space, was this huge black circle. A big round scorch mark in the ground, like something had been burned there. Not just a little bonfire either. The earth was charred in a perfect ring, and nothing was growing through it. Standing there, looking at the grave in the front and the burn mark in the back, I just remember thinking, whatever happened here, it wasn't good. My dad and Uncle Ray spent that evening in the kitchen, talking over what needed fixing. The place needed a lot of work. The roof leaked in one corner, a window was cracked, some of the wiring looked like a fire waiting to happen. They didn't have much money for furniture, so for a while, Uncle Ray, Aunt Lisa, and little Maddie all slept in one bed in the living room. Over the next couple of weeks, my dad and some of the other relatives started coming out regularly to help repair the place. I'd tag along sometimes, but even with people around, that cabin never stopped feeling wrong. You know how some houses feel welcoming, like they're glad you're there? This one felt like it was watching us and waiting for us to leave. That's when the weird stuff started happening. One night, Dad came home and he just looked tired. Not work tired, heavy tired. We were sitting at the table and he said, "Your Uncle Ray's not sleeping much." I asked why, and Dad said, "Because something's walking around that house at night, and it ain't any of them." They were all sleeping in the living room, and almost every night they heard footsteps in the hallway, moving back and forth. Doors would open and close on their own. Not just little creaks, full-on click and swing. They'd get up to check, thinking maybe the wind had blown something, but the windows were shut, and there was no draft. The footsteps never really stopped either, just pacing, like someone was restless. Aunt Lisa had her own share of things. One afternoon, she was washing dishes and looked up at the kitchen window. She swore she saw a little boy in overalls and a straw hat run past the window, just quick enough to catch with her eyes. She thought it was Maddie's cousin at first, so she went outside to fuss at him for playing near the steep hill. There was no one there. Another time, their daughter Maddie came in from the yard, all excited. She said, "Mama, I was playing with the boy, the one with the hat." She described him again, overalls, straw hat, about her size. She said they'd been playing near the rock cliff, but when Lisa went out to look, there was no sign of anybody. As all this was happening, Uncle Ray's health started going downhill faster. His pain got worse, the treatments were wearing him out, and he had to be hospitalized more and more often. But what really scared us weren't just the physical changes. It was how he started acting whenever he was at the cabin. One night, some of our cousins were visiting him there. Things had been especially active. Doors slamming, the sound of someone walking from room to room, even when everyone was in the living room together. At some point, Uncle Ray suddenly insisted on taking everyone into the back bedroom. He told them, "We need to stay in here. They're coming for me. I don't want them to get you too." Now, you hear something like that, and your first instinct is to chalk it up to the medication or the cancer getting to his mind. And maybe that was part of it. But the way my aunt described it, he was terrified. Not confused, afraid. Like he could feel something closing in that nobody else could see. After that, he ended up back in the hospital for a while. But even when he wasn't staying at the cabin, whenever he talked about it, he'd say things like, "I don't think that place wants me there." Or, "Whatever's out there in those woods, it knows I'm weak." Things just kept escalating. The footsteps got louder. Doors that were locked would be found open. Once, they came back from a hospital trip and found every cabinet in the kitchen standing wide open. No sign of a break-in, nothing missing. Finally, the family had had enough. Between the fear and his health getting worse, they just couldn't stay there. They packed up what they could and left. Uncle Ray, Lisa, and Maddie moved in with my Aunt Carol closer to town, where he eventually passed away on hospice care. After he died, our family minister, Pastor Hall, went out to the cabin at the landlord's request. Whatever your beliefs are about that kind of thing, I'll just tell you what happened. He walked the property, prayed, and did what he called a cleansing, blessing the house, the land, even the little grave out front. He said the place felt heavy, like something had settled in there and didn't want to let go. A year or so later, the cabin burned down. No one was living in it at the time. The story we were told was that it was probably some kind of electrical issue, but the power had supposedly been off. By the time anyone got up that hill with water, there wasn't much left but the chimney, part of the metal roof, and that blackened ring in the backyard, darker and wider than before. Last time I went up there, which has been a while, it was just rubble and weeds. The grave marker was still there though, tilting a little further into the earth. I don't know what you believe about ghosts or demons or any of that. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm just telling you that my uncle went to that cabin sick, and whatever was already there seemed to notice. It felt like the place had soaked up years of grief and fear and never let them go, and he walked right into it at the weakest point in his life. Sometimes I think about that little baby's grave, the scorch mark in the yard, the kid in overalls running past the window, and I think about my uncle saying, "They're coming for me." And even now, miles and years away from that hill, it still gives me chills. You know how every small town has that place? For me, it was the old asylum on the hill. I grew up in this quiet little town where everyone pretended not to be obsessed with that building, but we all were. It was this abandoned, sprawling psychiatric hospital that you could see from almost anywhere. To most people, it was just a creepy landmark. To me, it felt personal. My Nan, Eileen, had worked there as a psychiatric nurse, and my granddad, Tom, was a porter. I grew up on their stories. Well, the pieces of them they were willing to tell anyway. They never really went into the grisly details. It was more small things. The smell of disinfectant that wouldn't leave their clothes. The patients who loved gardening. The way the corridors echoed when it was quiet. So even as a kid, I was obsessed with the place. Not in a horror movie way, more in a "this is my family's history" way. I used to press my face to the car window whenever we drove past, trying to catch a glimpse of the broken windows or overgrown grounds. I knew there was no chance I'd be allowed inside back then, but I always told myself, one day, when I'm older. When I hit my teenage years and started going out more, my mom, her name's Claire, had one rule she repeated like a broken record. Don't go near the hospital. Not the building, not the grounds. Just stay away, all right? And honestly, I listened. I was weirdly obedient for a teenager, but it didn't kill the curiosity. If anything, it made it worse. I wanted to walk the same paths my grandparents had. I wanted to stand where they'd stood and actually see it, not just from the road, not from the safety of the car, but up close. Then we moved. Our new house was just around the corner from the old hospital. From my bedroom window, I could see the top of its roofline, broken and jagged against the sky. At night, if I twisted the blinds just right, I could catch the outline of the main block, silhouetted by the streetlights. That's when the obsession turned into something else. I started dropping hints to my mom constantly. We could just walk past it. Maybe just the driveway? Not inside, I promise. Just the grounds. Every time. No, it's dangerous, and it's private property. Until one day, she didn't say no. I still remember how casually she brought it up. We were in the kitchen. She was making tea, and I was half scrolling my phone, half staring out of the window, like usual. She just said, "If we went in the daytime, and we stayed outside, just the grounds, would that be enough for you?" I must have looked like a cartoon character, the way my jaw dropped. I kept waiting for her to say she was joking. Instead, she added, "But we don't go inside. The building's unstable, and there's asbestos everywhere. I mean it. We stay out." I agreed so fast it was almost embarrassing. Technically, going onto the grounds was trespassing, but getting in wasn't exactly a challenge. People broke in all the time. The fence had gaps like missing teeth. We found one wide enough to step through without even ducking. So there we were, just me and my mom, slipping through this torn section of fence into a different world. We followed a short path through a strip of woodland, only a couple of minutes long, really. It was quiet in that way that feels heavy, like the air itself is listening. Soft earth under our shoes, the faint sound of branches knocking together overhead. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. And then, suddenly, the trees ended. There it was, up close. It felt bigger, like it was leaning over us. Bits of the roof had collapsed. Ivy crawled up the walls, and graffiti covered almost every flat surface. Names, symbols, messages that didn't make sense anymore. We made our way around to the front, the part I'd only ever seen from a distance, driving past with my grandparents. Being right there on the gravel, looking up at those tall, broken windows was surreal. I kept imagining my Nan in her uniform, my granddad pushing trolleys along those corridors. For about 15 minutes, everything was calm. We walked slowly, stopping now and then so I could take quick photos on my phone. I didn't pose or anything. I just wanted to remember the angles, the doorways, the arches. I was buzzing, but in this quiet, reverent way. Then we heard it, the crunch of tires on gravel. Both of us froze. The sound got closer, then stopped, not far from where we were. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps followed, the kind where the person isn't trying to be quiet at all. Then a man's voice. Harsh, irritated, and instantly familiar, even though I'd never actually met him. The groundsman. Every town has its legends, and he was one of ours. People said he'd scream at trespassers, that he'd let his dog loose to chase them out. There were rumors about him threatening people, stories that got retold so many times no one knew what was true anymore. But his reputation alone was enough to keep most people away. Mom and I looked at each other, wide-eyed. No words, just that look. We sort of mime-acted a plan at each other, back the way we came, quietly. Now. We turned around and started walking back, as lightly as we could manage. I could hear the man moving somewhere else on the grounds. At least, I hoped it was somewhere else, and not getting closer. Every little sound felt amplified. Our shoes on the gravel, a branch snapping underfoot, my own breathing. Still, even then, I couldn't resist. I lifted my phone and snapped a few more photos as we went. A broken staircase here, a crumbling archway there. I never stopped for more than a second. Click, walk, click, walk. Somehow, we made it back to the fence without seeing him. We slipped through the gap onto the public footpath, like we were emerging from underwater. By the time we reached the car, we both let out that same long, shaky breath. The kind that only comes out once you realize how tense you've been. On the drive home, I just kept saying, "Thank you. Seriously, thank you for taking me." Mom smiled, but she was gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. That night, we were back to normal life. Sitting in the living room, TV murmuring away, lamps on, everything soft and ordinary. Mom was half watching some crime drama. I'd put my earphones in and decided to scroll through the photos I'd taken. Now, this was back when live photos were still fairly new to me. I knew they existed, but I'd never really thought about the fact that they capture a little bit of sound with each picture. So I'm just scrolling, completely relaxed. I tap the first live photo from the hospital, and it comes to life for a second or two. All I hear is what I expect, the crunch of our footsteps on gravel, mine and Mum's. That's it. Next one, same thing. Gravel, a faint rustle, nothing weird. Then I get to this one shot of a crumbling archway that seemed to lead into an old corridor. Just darkness beyond it, thick and solid. I press down to play the live photo. For a moment, it's normal. Background noise, the soft scuff of my shoe. And then I hear it. A faint, childlike voice, right in my earphones, close, but somehow far away at the same time. R.I.P. me. I just stared at the screen, replaying it again and again, hoping I'd misheard. But no, same thing every time. That tiny voice, those two words. At this point, my hands were actually shaking, but I kept going. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Or the horrible logic of, if there's one weird thing, maybe the others will explain it. I swiped to the next photo. At first, there's nothing unusual, just that ambient hiss that phones pick up, the sound of shoes moving over stones. Then, clear as day, a different voice cuts through. Older, sharper. Not my Mum's, not mine. The kind of voice that sounds like it's right behind you. You fucked up. I froze. I don't think I even breathed. It wasn't just the words, though those were bad enough. It was the tone. There was this horrible certainty in it, like the speaker knew something I didn't. Like it wasn't a joke or a random mutter, but a statement. You fucked up. That was it. No laughter, no follow-up. Just that sentence, dropped like a stone into a lake. I went through every other live photo from that day. Thankfully, those were the only two with voices. But that almost made it worse. Why those two? Why that archway? Why those words? Eventually, Mom glanced over and noticed how pale I was. You all right? She asked. I pulled my earphones out and just handed her the phone. Listen, I said. She played the first one. I watched her whole expression change. The second she heard that small voice say, R.I.P. me, her eyebrows shot up and her mouth tightened. Then she went to the next one, the older voice, the swearing. Her reaction honestly scared me more than the recordings did. She looked rattled, properly shaken. That's not us, she said quietly. I know, I told her. And it wasn't. For one, neither voice sounded anything like us. The child's voice was lighter, almost echoey. The older one had this firm, almost clipped way of speaking, like someone who's used to being listened to. But more than that, I would never swear like that in front of my mom. Not then, not now. Even at 15, I was painfully self-conscious about that sort of thing around her. There is just no version of reality where I casually drop, you fucked up, within earshot of her, and don't spontaneously combust from embarrassment. Of course, when we told other people later, they all said the same thing. You must have been talking and not realized. It's probably someone in the distance. Phones distort things. It's just you. It has to be you. And I get it. That explanation is easier. It's neater. It fits. But the truth is, it doesn't. Because those voices weren't ours. They didn't sound like us, didn't feel like us. And those particular words, R.I.P. me, you f***ed up. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if that second voice was talking about us going there. like some strange, belated warning preserved in a few seconds of video I didn't even know I was recording. Or maybe it was never about us at all. Either way, I still have those live photos, and every time I move them to a new phone, I tell myself I'm not going to play them again, but I always do. So, let me just tell you this the way I'd tell a friend over coffee. When I moved into my boyfriend's place, let's call him Daniel, everything started to fall apart. And I don't mean emotionally, I mean the apartment itself just gave up. Right before I moved in, a pipe in the ceiling between the hallway and the kitchen burst. It flooded the neighbor's place below us. For months, like almost 8 months, we had this ugly, open section of wall and ceiling with cables and pipes exposed, and a kitchen that was basically just decoration. We cooked on a little hot plate in the living room and washed dishes in the bathroom sink. It already felt like the apartment didn't want us there. From the very beginning, I felt uneasy in that place, especially in the narrow hallway that leads to the bathroom. You know that feeling when you're sure someone is standing just behind you, even though you know you're alone? That's what it's like every time I walk down that hall. One time, I went into the bathroom to get ready for a shower. I was about to pull my leggings down when I clearly felt something tug on the back of them. Not like a brush or static or anything, a definite tug, like fingers catching the fabric. I froze. I whipped around, half expecting to see Daniel there joking around. No one. I can't explain how much that freaked me out. My heart was pounding so hard I just stood there, breathing, telling myself I was imagining it. But it felt so real. The bedroom doesn't feel safe either. We later found out that water from the roof gutter had been leaking down the outside wall for who knows how long, which made the wall cold and damp. At night, as I'm lying in bed, I get this sensation that someone is pacing along that wall, or sometimes just standing by the corner, facing the bed. I don't see anything, but I feel it. It's like being watched from the doorway of a dark room. Lately, things have gotten weirder. The bathroom light is often on when no one's been in there. I'll walk past and think, oh, Daniel must be in there. But the door's open and it's empty. I make a point of turning the light off when I leave, and still, later on, it's glowing again. I also keep hearing these small tapping sounds near the metal trash can in there. Not just random building noises. It's rhythmic, like someone lightly flicking the edge with a nail. When I look, nothing's moved. Nothing's touching it. And then there's my phone. Sometimes I sit on the toilet scrolling through Instagram Reels, like you do. I'll pause a video, put the phone down out of reach so I can wash my hands, and while I'm at the sink, I hear it start playing again. Sometimes it even scrolls to the next video on its own. The first few times I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the screen glitched. Maybe I didn't tap properly. But it keeps happening, and always in that bathroom. The bathroom also gets freezing cold for no good reason. It's a tiny room. The heater in the apartment is on. The window doesn't even open fully. It's stuck half shut. Yet suddenly it's so cold in there that I can see my breath. Then I step back into the hallway, and the temperature feels normal again. It's not just the bathroom either. In the kitchen and living room, I sometimes hear the TV murmuring, like a late-night talk show playing in the background. I walk in to tell Daniel to turn it down, and the TV is completely off. No standby light, nothing. Other times I hear the delicate clinking of glass, like someone lightly tapping two glasses together, or flicking the rim with a fingernail. I'll go check, expecting to find something tipped over, but every glass is exactly where it should be. No mess, no explanation. Just the echo of a sound that shouldn't have been there. In one dream, our bedroom and hallway looked exactly the same as in real life. I saw these pale, almost transparent figures walking in a slow line along the bedroom wall, heading toward the corner where it meets the hallway. Then they turned and walked back, one by one, toward the bathroom door. I watched them, and then I realized I was seeing myself too, lying in bed, asleep. And I was standing behind my sleeping body, just watching, unable to move or speak. The whole time I had this feeling that the figures weren't seeing me. They were circling something else. Us. The bed. That path between the bedroom and the bathroom. In another dream, I was floating above the bed, twisted into this uncomfortable position, like my body was bent wrong. One arm was stretched out toward the door. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink. Then, out of nowhere, this smoky, dark hand formed around my outstretched fingers. It didn't grab my wrist, just gently closed over my fingertips and pulled. The sensation was so real that I woke up with my hand still reaching out, my fingers tingling. All of this has gotten to the point where Daniel and I are genuinely scared to go to the bathroom at night. We've started leaving the hallway light on and the bathroom door open whenever one of us has to use it. Neither of us wants to be the one walking down that dark hallway alone. There's this particular spot, right at the entrance to the bathroom in the hallway, that feels the worst. Every time I walk past it, I get this tight, heavy feeling in my chest, like stepping into a room where people have just been arguing. It doesn't matter if it's morning or afternoon, lights on or off. That patch of floor always feels wrong. If I had the chance, I'd show you a picture of it, because it looks completely normal. Just a hallway. But that's the place where I feel least alone, and not in a comforting way. I keep telling myself it's the stress, the water damage, the disruption of the renovations, the bad sleep. But there's a part of me that believes the apartment itself remembers every crack, every leak, every time the walls were broken open. And something else moved in through those openings and never really left. So, let me just start at the beginning. I grew up in northern Alaska, and if you've ever spent a summer up here, you know how strange the light can be. The sun just sort of forgets how to set. The nights are more of a dimmer switch than real darkness. But once you get up past the Arctic Circle, it's something else entirely. It feels like the world is stuck between day and night, and your brain never quite knows which way is up. Funny thing is, that's where you really start to fear the dark, when there isn't any. See, the old stories up here, the Inupiaq and Yupik and other native elders, they talk about beings called the Tornit. According to them, the Tornit were here long before their people paddled up to these shores. Big, strong, human-shaped, but not quite human. For a while, the story goes, they all lived in a kind of uneasy peace. But then, one day, an Inuit hunter's son killed a Tornit in a fit of anger. Some say over a stolen kayak, some say over a woman. After that, the Tornit vanished into the wild places, way back into the mountains and tundra. They didn't disappear, though. They just stopped being neighbors and became something else. Something you only meet when things have already gone wrong. Now, that old legend isn't mine to tell properly. If you want it, you should sit with an elder in one of the villages. They'll tell it the right way. I'm just giving you the short version, so what happened to me makes a little more sense. What is mine to tell is my own run-in with what we around here, those of us who aren't native, call the Alaskan Bushmen. My name's Eli, by the way. This was, a good few years back now. It was late June, the solstice week, the longest stretch of daylight we get. I'd been asked by a little coastal village called Tulik to help track down a problem bear, Big Brown, by the tracks. It had busted into one of their storage sheds and made off with a ridiculous amount of food. Up here, that's not just annoying, that's dangerous. Food is survival, especially for the folks who stay through the winter. So I loaded up my sled, hitched the dogs, and headed out over the tundra. Even in summer, Some of those stretches are nothing but wind, ice crust, and low scrub bushes pretending to be trees. The bear's tracks were clear enough at first, big prints punched into softer patches of ground. I was mushing along at an easy pace. Can't run the dogs too hard or they'll burn out quick. When I started to feel like something was off. You ever get that sense that someone's watching you, but when you look around, there's nobody there? It was like that, but heavier. Like the air itself was paying attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw what I thought was a stunted black spruce out on a little rise. Tall, thin, just a dark shape against the washed-out sky. I didn't think much of it. This is Alaska. There's always some lone, weird tree where it shouldn't be. But after a while, I realized that tree hadn't been there before. And as we moved, it seemed to shift. Not closer, not farther, just always at the edge of my vision, in a place where a tree shouldn't be. I kept glancing over, trying not to spook myself. Every time I looked straight at it, it just sat there, innocent as anything, like a regular silhouette on the horizon. Then I blinked, just a normal blink, and it was gone. Not, I lost track of it. Not, maybe I misjudged the distance. Just gone, like someone erased it from the world. That's when the wind changed. A moment before, it had been a faint, almost warm breeze from the south, the kind that smells like wet earth and distant sea. Then, all at once, it swung around and hit me from the north, sharp and dry, like it had scraped its way across a glacier before it found me. It was a Chinook wind, but not the kind we welcome in winter. This one felt wrong. It carried this hollowness, like it was blowing out of a place that wasn't meant for people. I pulled my parka a little tighter without even thinking about it. One of the lead dogs, Runa, let out a low whine and flicked her ears back. The rest of the team got jittery, their paws dancing, but they kept moving. I looked up, and there they were. Not one shape this time, several. Tall, too tall to be any person I know. Broad shoulders, long arms that hung just a little too low. All of them standing dead still out ahead of us in the distance. Just shadows against the pale sky, like someone had cut human shapes out of the daylight. I slowed the team, brought them in a bit. The dogs didn't want to go forward. Tails low, ears flat, eyes rolling. They knew something I didn't. I squinted, trying to make out faces, or even just details, clothes, fur, anything. But there was nothing. No color, no features. Just these dark cutouts in the light. And the feeling that came over me. It wasn't like being watched. I felt that plenty out hunting. This was different. This felt like being evaluated. That's the best way I can put it. Like they were studying me, weighing me, trying to decide if I was worth anything. Food, a threat, a curiosity, who knows? Every hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood up, goosebumps everywhere. My body knew before my brain did. This is bad. This is very, very bad. You need to go. I didn't say a word out loud. The wind would have eaten my voice anyway. I just shifted my weight, tightened my grip on the handlebar, and gave the slightest tug on the line to turn the sled around. I swear to you, the dogs did not wait for a command. The second I thought run, they were already moving. Runa barked once, sharp and panicked, and the whole team lunged like someone had fired a starting gun. The sled jerked so hard I nearly went off the runners. I wrapped my hands around the handle like it was the only thing holding me to the world, and bent my knees as we flew. I didn't look back. For a while, it felt like we were racing through a tunnel of shadows. I could see shapes flickering at the edges of my vision. Tall forms pacing us, keeping up without effort. Every time I dared a glance to the side, there'd be this suggestion of a figure, just far enough away to not be clear, just close enough to make my heart hammer. No sound but the dogs panting, the runners scraping, and the wind screaming in my ears. Then, as suddenly as it had picked up, the wind changed again. It shifted to this strange, spiraling gust that almost sounded like laughing. Not human laughter, not anything I recognized. Just this high, thin, swirling sound, like the air itself was amused that I was running. And then, nothing. The shadows at the edges of my vision vanished. The pressure on my chest eased. The world went back to being just tundra and sky and the distant shape of the village behind us. I finally dared to slow the team. The dogs came down to a trot, then a walk, tongues lolling, sides heaving. I was shaking so hard I could barely keep my boots steady on the runners. I looked back the way we'd come. No tall shapes, no bear, no tracks except our own and the ones we'd been following, which just stopped. Like something had decided that was as far as I needed to go. I didn't see the Bushmen again that day. I never did see that bear either. When I made it back to Tulik, one of the elders took one look at my face and just nodded, like he already knew. He didn't ask many questions, just said, "Sometimes they let you live with a warning. Listen next time." So now, when folks ask me if I believe in the Tornit, or the Alaskan Bushmen, or whatever name you want to give them, I tell them this. Up here, there are things that were walking this land before we had words for them. If you're lucky, you'll never meet them. But if you ever find yourself under a sun that refuses to set, with a wind that laughs and shadows that stand a little too still, turn your sled around. You don't want to find out what happens if they decide you are worth something. So, let me set the scene for you. It's late September, right on that edge where summer's officially given up, but winter hasn't quite shown its teeth yet. That's always the quietest time on the water. The tourists are gone, the gift shops are shuttered, and the birds have already taken the hint and headed south. Out there, when it's that quiet, you can hear everything. You hear the sea lions barking from the rocks, sounding like drunk men laughing in the fog. You hear the old wood of the docks creak with the tide, and you can hear the otters in the inlets, chittering and splashing, rolling around like they don't have a care in the world. But that's not the sound you need to worry about. The old-timers always said, it's when the otters start sounding like children crying. That's when you keep your ass off the water. Back then, I worked as a steward on the smaller ferries, the ones that handled locals and trucks, not the big cruise liners. My job was simple. Scrub the decks, clean the cabins, keep things tidy while we ran the quieter routes. I actually liked the off-season. Just us, the cold, and the sound of the ocean breathing. Some nights, when we were tied up at the less visited dock, the one with the moss-slick boardwalk and the busted lamp that never stayed lit, the older crew would start telling stories. There was this one old seaman, Joe. Every boat's got a Joe, right? Who loved to talk about the otter folk. The Kushtaka, he'd say, real serious, like it wasn't a joke at all. That's what the local tribes call them, not just otters, not really. They walk on two legs when they want to. They change shape. They steal your voice, and they use it to call people off the shore, out to the rocks, out where nobody can help you. Now, I grew up around stories. You hear enough of them, you learn to nod, maybe act impressed, but deep down, you write it off as something meant to scare kids and green hands. That's all it was to me. Just sailor talk. Until I saw one. It was one of those nights the sky feels too big. The water was calm, the air crisp, and the moon was so bright it turned everything silver. Above that, the northern lights were hanging low, ribbons of green and a little purple, like someone had draped ghostly curtains across the sky. We were tied up near the mouth of the harbor, and I was alone on deck with a bucket, a stiff brush, and a bad playlist humming out of my phone. I remember I was scrubbing near the bow when I heard it. That click, click, click of claws on deck planks. Sharp, light, too deliberate to be the boat settling. You know the sound of a dog on hardwood? It was like that. Nails that needed trimming. I froze, looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Just the fog starting to roll in, soft as breath, the faint slap of water against the hull. I told myself it was probably a crab pot shifting or some loose hardware and went back to scrubbing. A minute later, there it was again. Click, click, click. Closer this time. I stood up, turned around, and that's when I heard it. A child crying. It was faint at first, thin and distant, like it was coming from far down the dock. But as I stood there, it changed. It got wetter, closer. But the sound wasn't coming from the land. It was coming from the water. My stomach dropped. Every story I'd shrugged off started lining up in my head one by one. I walked to the rail and looked over, expecting, I don't know, a kid in a life jacket, someone in the water, something I could deal with. Instead, I saw something else. Then it rolled slightly, like it wanted me to get a better look. Its shoulders were too narrow, its neck too long, and its face was wrong. Too broad in some places, too human in others. Like something halfway finished, stuck between man and animal, trying to decide which mask to put on. And the eyes. For just a second, its eyes caught the moonlight, and they didn't shine like an animal's. There was a focus there, a recognition, like it was sizing me up, like it knew exactly what I was, who I was. I must have blinked, because by the time I pulled in a breath, it was gone. Just ripples where it had been, fading into the black. I backed away from the rail and didn't go near the edge again that night. At dinner, I told the crew what I'd seen. Most of them laughed. You know the way people laugh when they're trying to keep from being creeped out? A little too loud, a little too forced. One of the younger deckhands clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You've been pulling too many shifts, man. You're seeing things." But not everybody laughed. Old Joe just stared at me. He didn't joke, didn't tease. His face went kind of tight around the eyes, like he'd heard this before and wished he hadn't. All he said was, "You hear anything else out there tonight, you come inside. Don't go to the rail if you hear crying. You hear me?" I nodded, but I didn't really get it yet. Not until the next night. They put me on night watch the following evening. Fog had settled in thick as wool. The moon was still up there somewhere, but you'd never know it. The beam from my flashlight barely went 10 feet before the fog swallowed it. You know that kind of fog, where sound doesn't travel right. It deadens everything, makes normal noises feel far away and wrong. I was doing rounds, walking the deck, when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just the wind working through the railings, whistling that weird way it sometimes does. A kind of voice-shaped sound, easy to ignore. But then I heard actual words. My own voice. Not like my voice, not close to my voice. It was my voice, echo clear, coming from out in the fog. "Hey, can you hear me? I need some help over here." I stopped dead. It was my voice, but not where it was supposed to be. You ever hear a recording of yourself and think, do I really sound like that? Imagine that, but louder and calling you from the dark. Hello? Same tone, same little upward lilt I get when I'm not sure someone's listening. "I can't get back on board. Can someone give me a hand?" I didn't answer. Every warning I'd shrugged off, every story the old guys had told me, came rushing back in one rush of cold. Instead, I lifted my flashlight and pointed it out over the side toward the sound. The beam cut through layers of fog like curtains, just a slice at a time. That's when I saw it. Something was floating in the water, just past the edge of the light. I leans over the rail to get a better look, and my stomach turned to stone. It was an otter's face, but the eyes were human. Not just human, familiar. My own eye color, the same little crease at the corner, staring straight up at me, unblinking. The mouth twitched into a shape that was almost a smile, but too wide, too many teeth. Then, in my own voice, era smooth, casual, like we were in the break room, it said, "Can you come closer?" I did the only thing my body could think to do. I screamed. The next morning, I was packing up my gear at the end of the week when the captain asked me to come to his office. He wasn't a superstitious man. Practical, quiet, the kind of guy who measured his words like they cost money. He closed the door behind me and let out this long, tired sigh. "I heard what happened," he said. "What you told the others." I started to apologize, thinking he was going to tell me to quit scaring the crew. Instead, he studied me for a moment and said, very calmly, "Take a few weeks off. Don't go near the water. Not the dock, not the shore. Just stay inland for a bit." I asked him why, half hoping he'd say it was just for my nerves, that he thought I needed rest. He just shook his head. "Sometimes they take an interest," he said. "When they do, it's better if you give them less to look at." He didn't explain who they were. He didn't have to. I stayed away. It's been 3 weeks since I set foot on that ferry. Tomorrow, I'm supposed to go back. Part of me thinks it'll be fine, that it was all stress and fog and tricks of the light. Another part of me remembers the weight of that stare from the water, the way my own voice sounded wrong coming from somewhere it shouldn't be. So, do me a favor, yeah? If you're ever near the coast in the off-season, and the boardwalk's slick with moss, and the night's so quiet you can hear otters playing out by the rocks, listen closely. If they're just chattering and splashing, you're probably fine. But if they start to sound like children crying, or worse, like you, calling out from somewhere in the dark, don't go to the rail. Don't follow the voice. And whatever you do, stay off the water when the moon rises. So, I grew up in the same house my entire childhood. Same creaky floors, same chipped paint in the hallway, same old oak tree outside my window. I even stayed in the same bedroom until I was about 16. Now, here's the thing about that room. I never really felt anything weird in there. To me, it was just my room. Posters on the wall, piles of toys, the usual chaos. But my older cousins, they hated sleeping in there. They're all at least 10, 15 years older than me. Grown, tough, nothing scares me type people. And yet, every time they slept over, they'd be like, can I crash on the couch instead? At first, I thought they were just being dramatic. But later on, I realized they all felt something in that room that I just didn't. So, one night when I was about 7, maybe 8, we're playing hide and seek in the dark. Me, my big brother, and 2 of my cousins. The rule was, no lights, just flashlights if you really freaked out. I remember sprinting through the house, laughing, totally hyped up. My dad, Marco, had this closet that connected his bedroom to the bathroom, and that bathroom opened into the hallway. It was like this little secret shortcut. So I'm running, right? I cut through my dad's closet, burst into the bathroom, and I'm about to dart into the hallway, and I just stop. Because there, standing by the bathtub, is this little girl. She looks about my age, dark hair, kind of tangled. She's wearing this pale dress that looks old, like something from a family photograph. And she's just standing there, turned slightly away from me, like she's looking down at the tub. And for some reason, in that moment, my brain just goes, oh, one of my cousin's kids or something. Like it doesn't even register as scary. I'm a kid. I'm mid-game. I just think, oh, weird, and run right past her and back into the hallway. It wasn't until later that it really hit me. About a year after that, my older brother, his name's Lucas, was talking to me. We were in the kitchen, just snacking late at night, and he goes, "Hey, do you remember when you were younger and you were scared of Dad's bathroom?" And I'm like, I wasn't scared. Why? And he says, super casual, "I saw a little girl in there once, standing by the tub. Thought maybe you did too." And I swear to you, my stomach just dropped, because I hadn't told anyone about what I saw. Not my dad, not my cousins, nobody. And he described it almost exactly the same. The little girl by the bathtub, just standing there. By the way, that bathroom, it was directly across the hall from my bedroom door. You stepped out of my room, and boom, you were staring right at it. Now, around this same time, my dad kept getting on my case about sneaking around at night. He'd say, "Melly, you have to stop getting up in the middle of the night and going to the kitchen. You've got school in the morning." And I'd be like, "Dad, I'm not. I'm literally asleep." But he was sure it was me. He said he'd hear these tiny, quick footsteps going down the hall, like a kid walking fast, light, but very distinct. The way he described it, he said it sounded like marbles or those little silica gel beads bouncing on the tile. Just this soft, scattering sound moving from my room past his door toward the kitchen. Sometimes he'd hear the dining room chairs scrape like someone was pulling them out from the table. The dining room was right next to my room, so any sound in there carried straight through our hallway. He'd get up, walk through the house, check on me, still in bed, out cold. Check the kitchen, lights off, everything in place. And then there was the night that really did it for me. I was 8. It was summer, so I didn't have to wake up early, and I was allowed to stay up a little later. I remember lying in bed, watching cartoons. The Fairly Odd Parents, I think. The glow from the TV was the only light in the room. Behind the head of my bed, pressed up against the wall, I had one of those home versions of an arcade basketball game. You know, the kind with a little plastic hoop and a net that leads down to a tray, and a plastic lever inside the hoop that counts the baskets. Whenever the ball went through and hit that lever, it made this super loud sproing sound, like a metal spring snapping back. It was impossible to miss. So I'm lying there, kind of half zoned out, half watching TV. The room is quiet except for the show, and suddenly, that exact loud, springy sound goes off right behind my head. I froze, like completely froze. Slowly, I sit up and turn around, and I see the little orange basketball just rolling down from the hoop all the way to the edge of the tray, like it had just gone through. There was no one else in the room, no draft, no one bumped it. The ball had been sitting there for hours. I remember my heart just pounding. I grabbed the remote, turned the TV off, and the silence after that was somehow even worse. I glanced at my alarm clock, and it was 2:53 a.m. We always talk about 3 a.m. being the creepy time, so I was like, nope, absolutely not. I bolted out of bed and went to my dad's room. I didn't even try to play it cool. I just crawled into his bed and stayed there the rest of the night. I didn't tell him the full story until years later, but I remember every single detail from that moment. The TV show, the exact sound, the way the ball moved. It's like it's burned into my memory. After that, I started thinking about that little girl in the bathroom, the footsteps my dad kept hearing, the chair moving, and then the basketball thing. And instead of being constantly terrified, I decided to make peace with it. I started leaving toys out on purpose. Before school, I'd pick a doll or a little figurine and place it where she could reach it. On my desk, on the floor by the bed, near the basketball game. And I'd say out loud, quietly, "These are for you, okay? You can play with them while I'm gone, just don't scare Dad too much." Sometimes, when I was alone in my room, I'd just talk to her. Not like full conversations, but little comments like, "I had a bad day today," or, "Please don't make loud noises tonight, I'm really tired." I didn't even know for sure if she was there, but weirdly, it made me feel better. Less like a kid trapped in a haunted room, and more like I was sharing a space with someone who just didn't have anywhere else to go. My dad still lives in that same house. The room is a guest room now. The bathroom is still across the hall, and the dining room is still right next to it, just like before. When we all get together, me, my brother, my cousins, we still joke about the house ghost. My dad will say, "She was running around again last night," and we'll laugh. But there's always this little pause afterward where we're all thinking, "Yeah, but also, maybe she really was." I don't know exactly who she was or why she was there, but I grew up with this sense that I wasn't always alone in that house. And instead of that being purely frightening, over time it became almost comforting. So, I guess I'll just talk to you like we're sitting on a couch together, yeah? Since I can remember, sleep has never really felt safe to me. I've always had nightmares, like the same one over and over with slightly different angles. They weren't just bad dreams. They were about being used, being exploited in ways that made my whole body feel dirty, even after I woke up. Sometimes I was myself in the dream. Sometimes I was someone else, and I was just trapped inside her, watching everything from her eyes. There's one version I still see so clearly. In that one, I'm not me. I'm this little girl, maybe 9 or 10, wearing a yellow hoodie and worn-out blue jeans, sitting on these rough concrete steps outside a big gray stone building. The sun is beating down, and I remember feeling this deep, heavy knowing. I don't want to be here. I don't want this. But I also knew I was being forced to be there. In the dream, I'm sitting there with my knees pulled up, and I know I'm supposed to do things that feel disgusting and wrong. There's this horrible burning pit in my stomach, like my body already knows what's coming. Then I see him. I don't look at his face. I won't look at his face. But I see his clothes. He's tall and skinny, walking up the steps in these straight, dark jeans and old, beat-up boots. He stops right next to me, towering over me. I just stare at his shoes and feel my whole body go cold. He turns and walks into the building, and that burning in my stomach turns into fire, because I know I'm supposed to follow him. I know what happens if I do. In the dream, I walk toward the door, and right as I'm about to step inside, I wake up. Every time I wake up right there, and every time I want to go back. Not because I liked the dream, but because I wanted to grab that little girl and run. I wanted to save her. After a while, I started dreading sleep. I was terrified that one day I'd get stuck in that dream and not wake up, that I'd just live there forever, with no way to pull myself out. And it wasn't just that one nightmare. I had dreams about being kidnapped, too. You know that feeling when you're running in a dream, but your body feels like it's sinking into the ground? You're moving in slow motion, and terror is just chewing you up from the inside? Yeah, that. I'd be running, knowing someone was chasing me, and my legs just wouldn't work. I'd wake up like, why does my brain hate me so much? Then things somehow got worse. My dad started traveling for work a lot, so my brother, my sister, and I would sleep with my mom because it made her feel better having us close. I was probably around 10 or 11. You'd think being right next to her would make me feel safe, right? But at that point, I was already scared to fall asleep. I was afraid of the dreams, afraid I'd just slip into that nightmare world and not come back. One night, I'm lying next to my mom, trying to calm down enough to sleep, and suddenly I get these flashes, like little movie clips in my head, of me hurting her. It was like something in my mind picked up an axe and went after my own mother. I remember my whole body tensing up like, what the hell was that? I turned toward her and clung to her arm because touching her made me feel like I was anchored in reality. She moved away a bit. She never liked being touched when she slept. But for me, that physical contact was like, okay, she's here, I'm here, this is real. I'm not lost in some nightmare. And the whole time I'm thinking, how do you even say this out loud? How do you tell your mom, hey, I just saw violent images of you in my own head and I'm terrified of myself, without sounding completely insane or scaring her? Around that time, weird stuff started happening in the house. Things would slide off shelves for no reason. We'd hear loud bangs, random voices. One of the creepiest things was that I'd sometimes hear a whole party going on outside my bedroom door. Music, voices, people talking like the house was full. I'd open my door like, okay, who's here? And the living room and kitchen would be completely empty. Just dead quiet. Most nights, I'd also hear this shuffling sound right above me when I was trying to sleep. Like multiple sets of feet moving around. Maybe 2 or 3 people. Right there in my room, hovering over me, watching me while I slept. At first, I was terrified. I would pull the blanket over my head and just freeze. But it kept happening, over and over, until I got, honestly, more annoyed than scared. The shuffling would get louder and louder until I couldn't sleep at all. There were nights I literally thought, can y'all just shut up so I can rest? One night, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw them. I saw this tall shadow figure at the foot of my bed, wearing a hat. Behind him were maybe 10 other shadowy shapes, all dark and human-like, spaced out around the room, just standing there, watching me. I'd also see those black shadows randomly during the day sometimes, and it got into my head. I started to believe they were trying to talk to me without words, like they were in my mind, telling me what to do. Eventually they stopped showing up like that, but by then, the damage was kind of already done. Everyone in the house started noticing things, the noises, stuff moving. It turned into a joke like, okay, so the house is definitely haunted. My mom is a big Christian woman, and she hated when we joked about ghosts or spirits in her home. But me, my brother, and my sister, we could feel something there. When I was younger, before all of this got so dark, I loved playing teacher. I'd line up my stuffed animals, give them tests, pretend we were at recess, and teach them stuff I'd just learned in school. My sister and I shared a bedroom all the way up until we were almost out of high school. In the beginning, she played along with my little pretend classroom, but she grew out of it way before I did. So after a while, she didn't want me doing it in our room anymore. So I started setting up my classroom in other places. The kitchen, the living room, but mostly my parents' bedroom. And that's where it really started to feel evil. I'd be there, teaching my imaginary students, just being this happy little kid, and I'd suddenly feel it, like someone was watching me from the corner of the room. The feeling would shift from just being watched to this heavy, intense hatred. It was like whatever was watching me hated that I was happy, hated that I was playing, that I still had some innocence left. Some days I couldn't stay in that room very long, because the longer I laughed or smiled, the stronger the feeling got. I remember one day standing near my dad's side of the bed and just knowing something was in the corner. I stared right at that spot, and in my mind I saw it like this dark, swirling cloud with energy pulsing through it. I could feel it staring back with this deep, burning hate. I knew, somehow, that it was a man. Not because I saw a face, but the way you can feel someone's energy and just know. My gut said, this is a man, and he wants me to suffer. After that, I stopped playing teacher. I stopped letting myself be playful in that room, because every time I tried, that feeling came back, like he wanted to crush it. And I kept thinking, what did I even do to deserve this? I'm a child. I didn't hurt you. Why are you targeting me? All of that, over time, really messed with my head. There were hospital stays, therapy sessions, all of that. I'm not going into detail here, but just know, it was bad, and it was way too much for someone that young. Another thing that happened, this one still makes my skin crawl. Analyzing. Sleeping on the floor for some reason. One night, I ended up half inside my parents' tiny closet, with this big pile of laundry next to me, and my feet stretched out under their bed. I'm half asleep, listening to my mom and sister walking in and out of the room, getting ready for something. And then I feel it, this long, cold, almost slimy hand wrapping around my foot and pulling. It felt like the fingers were too long, the nails too sharp. I jolted awake and screamed, "Who just grabbed my foot?" My mom and sister rushed in like, "What? What happened?" Both of them were like, "It wasn't me." And there I was, just sitting on the floor, heart pounding, trying to act like it was nothing, trying to convince myself I imagined it. But my body knew I didn't. One time, my grandma came to visit from Arizona. She walked into the house and, later that day, she pulled my mom aside, all frantic, and asked, "Why didn't you tell me you invited that man here?" My mom was confused. "What man?" she asked. "It's just us." My grandma said, "I saw a man sitting in your husband's chair. He looked angry, mean." When I heard that, it was like everything inside me went still. Because she didn't know my stories. She didn't know about the shadow in the corner, or the footsteps, or the hatred I felt. But she saw him. That was the first time I felt truly validated. Like, okay, I'm not just crazy. Something is really here. Eventually, I opened up to my mom about the nightmares. Not everything, but enough. She told me to sleep with a Bible under my pillow. So I did. And you know what? The nightmares actually stopped for a while. They didn't go away forever, but they weren't as constant. It felt like I could finally rest. When I'd walk around the house at night and feel that presence, especially near my parents' room, I'd quietly repeat scripture in my head, rejecting whatever energy I felt around me. As soon as I did that, the feeling would lift. The room would feel empty in a good way. I felt, for the first time, like I had something to fight back with. Looking back, I really believe something was tormenting me. Not just a random ghost, but something darker. Maybe a demon, maybe something I don't have the right word for. I feel like it pushed thoughts into my mind, flashed images at me, twisted my feelings to convince me I was a monster, that I should destroy myself. But I also know this. I didn't give in. Not completely. I kept trying. I went through psych wards, therapy, all of that. And at some point, I realized that as much as other people could help, only I could decide to stay, to push back, to rebuild my own mind. Time passed. I got older. There were a lot of nights just sitting around, smoking weed, talking to myself, analyzing my own thoughts, trying to understand where all this darkness fit into who I am. I'm 24 now. I haven't felt that presence clearly in years, though sometimes, in my last apartment, I thought I caught a hint of it. A familiar heaviness in the corner of a room. I hear stories about things attaching to people and following them from place to place. I really hope that's not my situation. But I'd be lying if I said the thought doesn't cross my mind. The last big moment with him, at least that I'm aware of, was when I was about 18 or 19, still living at my parents' house. I was getting ready in the back bathroom, just doing my makeup, music playing quietly. My mom was in the front bathroom getting ready too. And then, clear as day, right next to my right ear, I hear this deep male voice say my name. Naomi. Not a whisper, not in my head, out loud. The timing was so exact, it made my blood run cold. I got out of that bathroom so fast, and, like I always did, I tried to brush it off, pretend I was fine, push it down and keep moving. But the truth is, those things leave marks. I still get flashbacks, little bursts of those old feelings, the terror, the shame, the self-hatred. Sometimes they hit me out of nowhere, and my body reacts before my mind can catch up. Panic attacks, that feeling like I'm back in that old bedroom with shadows watching me. I don't talk about this a lot. I usually only open up if someone shares something similar first, because most people, they don't really understand how strong this stuff can feel, how real. And I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. Whatever is out there, whether you believe in spirits, demons, energy, whatever, they can mess with you, especially when you're vulnerable. But they don't get the final say. If you've ever gone through something like this, or anything that made you feel corrupted, or broken, or unworthy of being here, I just want you to know, I get it. You're not crazy for feeling what you feel. Be careful with the dark stuff. Be careful what you invite in, what you play with, what you open yourself up to. And be gentle with people who carry stories like mine. You might not see the whole battle, but trust me, it's real to them. And if you're listening to this, and any part of you recognizes yourself in my story, I'm really glad you're still here. Okay, so I'm 14 now, and this happened when I was like 5 or 6. I remember it way more clearly than I probably should. Back then, my family was doing pretty well. We lived in this nice 2-story house on a quiet street, Willow Lane. From the stairs and upstairs hallway, you could look straight down into the living room, like it was this open balcony. It was super late, around 3 in the morning. My dad, Mark, and my mom, Lena, were sitting on the couch, and I was on the floor in front of them watching TV. I remember being kind of half awake, just staring at the screen. Now, this first part is what my parents told me later, because I apparently zoned out. So, according to them, out of nowhere, a piece of dog food comes flying from the upstairs hallway and smacks my dad right in the back of the head. My dad turns to my mom and goes, "Why did you throw that at me?" And my mom's like, "What are you talking about? I didn't throw anything." For context, we lived in a no-pets neighborhood. No dogs, no cats. We didn't even own dog food. There was literally no reason for dog food to be in our house at all. A minute later, it happens again. Another little piece hits my dad. Then another. He starts getting annoyed, thinking my mom is playing around, but she keeps insisting she's not doing anything. They're whisper arguing, trying not to freak me out. Then suddenly, a piece hits my mom in the back of the head. She whips around and goes, "Mark, seriously, why are you throwing stuff at me?" And my dad just stares at her and says, "See, I told you it wasn't me." That's the moment I remember snapping fully awake. I looked up at them, and I could tell they were scared, not just annoyed. My mom's eyes kept going up toward the hallway. My dad kept glancing between her and the stairs, like he was trying to figure out if there was some kind of trick. My mom finally gets up and says she's going to check upstairs. At that time, my Aunt Rosa and her kids, my cousins, were living with us and sleeping in the rooms up there. My mom goes up and does this thing she always did. She'd gently tickle our sides to see if we were really asleep. She checked my cousins, Jay and Alina, and they were completely out, breathing heavy, dead asleep. No one running around, no one giggling, no one hiding. She comes back down looking even more confused. They decide to just keep watching TV and try to ignore it. After that, for a little bit, nothing else happens. Then my Aunt Rosa comes home from her late shift. She's tired, and my parents start telling her about the dog food throwing ghost. She does not believe in ghosts at all. She starts rolling her eyes, telling them they're overreacting. Finally, she stands up on the couch, like actually steps up on it, and yells toward the hallway, "Come on, ghost. You're not going to do anything to me. You're a coward." My mom is like, "Rosa, stop, don't say that," trying to pull her down, but my aunt just laughs. This is where it gets really scary for me. I remember standing up from the floor. I suddenly started feeling cold, like the temperature dropped, and this heavy, scared feeling just hit my chest. I looked up toward the hallway, right where the dog food had come from before. And I swear to you, it looked like an invisible hand grabbed a whole handful of dog food and just threw it down from the hallway. She ran upstairs, grabbed all the kids, me, my cousins, just scooped us up as best she could, and we left the house that night. We went to stay with a friend for a bit. A little while after that, my parents decided we were moving out of that house for good. On moving day, I remember sitting in the car while everyone was packing. The trunk was open, people were carrying boxes, and I suddenly realized, oh no, I left my tablet in my closet. So, little brave me decides to run back into the house alone. I go inside and it's so quiet. The house felt different, empty, echoey. I run upstairs, grab my tablet from the closet, and start heading back down the big staircase. There were 13 steps. I counted them all the time as a kid. I'm walking down, holding the railing with one hand and my tablet in the other. And then I feel it. Something cold touches my shoulder. Not just cold like a breeze, but solid and cold, like a hand resting right there. It felt small, so for a second I honestly thought it was my Aunt Rosa behind me, just messing around and trying to scare me. I remember thinking, oh, it's just her. I started to turn my head to look, but when I glanced over, I saw it. A gray hand on my shoulder. Not like a normal, healthy skin color. Gray. Almost see-through, but not completely. It looked wrong. Like something that shouldn't exist. The second I really saw it, my whole body went cold. At the same time, it kind of felt like my spine was on fire, like cold and burning all mixed together. Before I could scream or do anything, the hand pushed me. I wasn't moving. I wasn't tripping. I was just standing there, and then I was falling. I fell all the way down all 13 steps. I remember hitting the bottom, everything flashing, my tablet flying out of my hand. My body hurt so bad I couldn't even cry right away. I just lay there, stunned. My Aunt Rosa ran in right then. She had just walked into the house and heard the noise. She rushed over to me, yelling, "What happened? Did you fall? Are you okay?" I couldn't really talk. I was in so much pain and I was terrified. The only thing I could do was lift my hand and point up at the stairs. She looked up. I looked up. There was nothing there. No one standing on the steps. No one at the top of the stairs. Just the empty hallway. That's when the crying finally hit me. I got up as best as I could and ran outside, straight to my mom, sobbing. I told her I fell, but I didn't know how to explain the hand. I just knew I never wanted to go back in that house again. And we didn't. We never stepped foot in that house after that day. A few weeks after we moved out, my parents were talking to someone about the place. Maybe the new owners or a neighbor, I'm not totally sure. And they found out that an older couple had died in that house. An old man and his wife, both in their late 80s, passed away there. To this day, whenever my parents meet new people or the topic of ghosts comes up, they always tell the story about the dog food ghost and the stairs. Everyone laughs at first, and then they see my face. I always stay quiet. Okay, so before I dive in, there are a few things you should probably know. This all happened maybe 10 years ago, over the span of about 4 months, starting in January. My family on my dad's side is from Laos. We're Theravada Buddhist, and there's a lot of animist belief woven into how my dad sees the world. I grew up in a small town in northern Iowa, one of those places where everybody kind of knows everybody, and I've got cousins who are close enough in age that their kids call me uncle, even though I'm technically their cousin. It's that kind of family. One chilly afternoon in late winter, my dad comes up to me in the kitchen and says he wants to give me something for good luck. He reaches into his jacket pocket, pulls out this folded white cloth, and unwraps it really slowly, like he wants to be dramatic about it. Inside is what I think at first is just a gold nugget. When he hands it to me, I see it's actually a pendant. It's shaped like a woman, short, round figure, large breasts, kind of old-looking. Not super fancy or detailed, but it feels heavy, like it means something. Dad looks at me and says, very seriously, that I need to keep it close, in my pocket or around my neck at all times. It's for protection and good luck, he tells me. So I start carrying it. I'd slip it into my pocket during the day, sometimes wear it on a thin chain at night. And for a while, life is just good. Nothing crazy, but smooth. Work, friends, family, no bad vibes. A few months later, I ship off for training. I'd enlisted in the Army National Guard as a combat engineer and got sent down to Fort Sill in Oklahoma. I couldn't bring much with me, so before I left, I wrapped the pendant back in that white cloth and left it on a little shelf in my bedroom. Training was rough but straightforward. Long days, no sleep, lots of yelling. You know the deal. I pushed through, graduated, and came back home in late October. By then, I had completely forgotten about the pendant. I was focused on settling into my new job, reconnecting with friends, and hanging out with my cousins and their kids again. Everything was fine, until December. One night, I have this incredibly vivid dream. You know the kind that feels more like a memory than a dream? In it, I'm at one of our town's parks. It's late afternoon, the sun is out, and I can feel the warmth on my face, this light breeze on my arms. I can even smell the damp wood chips and the metal of the playground. My niece, let's call her Lily, she was about 5 at the time, is in the sand pit, totally focused on building this lopsided sandcastle. I'm sitting on a bench nearby, just watching her and feeling peaceful, really content. Then, across the park, on the other side, I notice someone. A woman sitting on a bench. I can't see her face, but I notice long black hair, very light skin, and this long white dress that kind of moves with the breeze. She's just sitting there, still. I look back at Lily. She looks up at me, gives me this big, goofy grin, and I smile back. And then the alarm on my phone drags me out of it. It's morning. Time to get ready for work. The next night, I go to sleep and have the exact same dream. Same park, same sunlight, same breeze, same sandcastle, same woman in the distance with the long black hair and white dress. Third night in a row, same dream again, except this time, the woman isn't sitting on the bench. She's standing in front of it, still far away, but now clearly turned in my direction. By the fourth night, I know what's coming before I even fall asleep. I'm almost scared to close my eyes. By the fifth night, the dream has changed completely. There's no sun. The sky is covered in dark, heavy clouds. The wind is cold and harsh, whipping around me. The park looks the same, but all the color is gone. My niece isn't there. The sand pit is empty. The swings are still. The only thing that remains is the woman. She's standing maybe 10 or 15 feet away from me. Long black hair, skin almost white, that same long white dress. This time, She's close enough that I should be able to see her face, but she's tilting her head down, like she's hiding it from me. My heart is hammering. I ask her, "Who are you?" Nothing. No answer. She slowly lifts her right arm and reaches toward me. Then, very slowly, she raises her head. And her face isn't a face. There are no eyes, no nose, no lips, no eyebrows. Just smooth, pale skin, like someone erased everything. I jolted awake with my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. After that, she started showing up in my dreams randomly. Not just the park either. Sometimes I'd be in my house or walking down my own street in the dream, and I'd see her, standing at the corner, in a doorway, at the edge of my vision. Always the long black hair, always the white breast, always that faceless face. It got to me. I finally told two people, my best friend Trevor and my cousin Anna. We joked about it a lot at first. They'd say stuff like, "Bro, don't bring that bad juju to my house." And we'd laugh. But underneath the jokes, I was genuinely scared. One weekend, Trevor and I decided to go to Anna's place. I needed family time. We played cards, messed around with the kids, and I got to hold my baby nephew and spoil Lily, who absolutely eats up any attention. She loves to be treated like the princess of the house. Towards the end of the night, Lily asks me to tuck her into bed before I leave. I tell her, "Okay, go on up. I'll be there in a minute." She runs up the stairs. I stay downstairs to help pick up cards and cups. When I'm done, I turn toward the staircase. The stairway is dark, just this rectangle of shadow. And halfway up, standing completely still in that darkness, is the silhouette of a woman with long black hair and a white dress. My heart just slams against my ribs. The first thing I think is, Lily. I flick on the stairway light as fast as I can. She's gone. I sprint up the stairs, go straight to Lily's room, and throw the door open. Lily's fine, sleepy, smiling, asking me where I've been. I tuck her in, kiss her forehead, and tell her goodnight, but inside I am shaking. When I go back downstairs, I tell Anna and Trevor. I just saw her. The woman. From my dreams. She was on the stairs. We all go quiet. Up until that point, she had never appeared outside my dreams. Seeing her in the house, that crossed a line. They were freaked out. I was freaked out. We all agreed it was time for me to head home. I go out to my car, get in, start it up, buckle my seatbelt. As I'm sitting there, I suddenly feel it. A hard slap on my left shoulder. Not a tap, a slap. I freeze. Slowly, I look up at the rearview mirror. She's there, sitting in the back seat, right behind me. Long black hair falling over that white dress, and that same pale, faceless face. I spin around in the seat, but the back seat is empty. The feeling of her hand on my shoulder, though, that doesn't go away. It's like the weight of someone resting their palm right there, fingers curling slightly over my collarbone. A couple weeks later, I have another vivid dream. Except this one doesn't feel like a normal dream at all. It feels wrong, heavy, like I've actually gone somewhere else. In the dream, I wake up in my bed. Everything looks the same, but there's this pressure in my chest. Something is off. I get up and walk outside. The street is there. The houses are there. The fences, mailboxes, streetlights. Everything looks exactly like my neighborhood. But there's no sound. No birds. No wind. No cars. Nothing. Just absolute silence. I start walking. My footsteps don't even make a sound. After a while, I finally hear something. This low, layered whispering. like multiple people talking quietly at once. It's coming from a small, white house that I don't recognize, but somehow it's sitting there on the corner, like it's always been part of my neighborhood. There's a light on inside. The front door is cracked open. I walk up the steps, push the door open, and see a set of stairs leading down into a basement. The whispering is louder now. It's not any language I recognize, just this constant hiss of voices. I go down the stairs. At the bottom, there's another door. My hand is shaking, but I grab the knob and open it. As I step inside and lift my head, I freeze. The room is full of people, dozens of them, all standing shoulder to shoulder, facing me. Every single one of them is wearing a smooth, white, faceless mask. No features, just blank. My heart starts racing. I stumble backward to grab the door, but it's gone. There's just wall behind me. Before I can even process that, I'm suddenly inside a cage. Iron bars. The masked figures are crowding around, reaching in through the bars, fingers brushing my shirt, my arms, my face. I press myself back against the far wall, completely panicked. Then, all at once, they stop moving. Every hand freezes mid-air. They all turn their heads slightly, like they're looking past me. The door of the cage slowly creaks open, and there she is, the woman with long black hair and the white dress. This time, she's wearing one of those blank white masks, too. She steps into the cage and, in one quick motion, slams me back against the wall with her hand around my throat. I can't breathe. I can feel her fingers digging into my neck, squeezing. I'm clawing at her wrist, but she doesn't move. Then she starts to lift her mask. Very slowly. There's this low animal growl coming from her, deep and wrong, like it's echoing inside my head instead of in the room. Just as the mask is about to clear her face, I wake up. I sit up in bed, gasping, heart racing so fast it hurts. I stumble into the bathroom and turn on the light. When I look in the mirror, there are bruises around my neck. Not faint ones. Dark, finger-shaped bruises. I twist around and see scratches all across my chest and down my back, like something with long nails dragged them while I was asleep. That's when it really hits me. This is not just in my head. I'm not just having bad dreams. Something is actually happening. From that point on, I barely sleep. When I do, it's in these short 2 to 3 hour bursts full of nightmares and that constant feeling of her hand on my left shoulder. Eventually, I almost get used to that pressure, like I'm walking around with someone just holding on to me. After a few weeks of this, I'm completely wrecked. Mentally, physically, everything. I'm exhausted, paranoid, jumpy. I start seeing her in reflections, in the corner of my eye, in the shadows of my own room. I tell him everything, about the dreams, the woman, the car, the bruises. I'm shaking as I talk, and he just looks at me, frustrated, and accuses me of being on drugs. Says I must be staying up too late, partying, letting my imagination go wild. I can't even describe how defeated I felt in that moment. I was convinced I was going to die, and no one would believe me. Then my cousin Anna reaches out and tells me to go see this older Lao guy she knows. She calls him Uncle Somchai, though we're not actually related. He's kind of a spiritual healer, the kind of man people in our community go to when things get weird. So I go to his place. I don't tell him the whole story. I just say, I think I'm being haunted by a spirit. I need help. He sits there for a minute, then starts asking questions. Did someone die recently? Did I go anywhere I shouldn't have gone? Did anyone give me something important that I don't carry anymore? And then it hits me. The pendant. The one my dad gave me for luck. I had left it on my shelf and never touched it again after I went to training. I tell him about it. His eyes narrow a bit and he nods. He tells me to bring it to him the next day. So the next day I go home, grab the pendant, still wrapped in that same white cloth, sitting on the dusty shelf, and bring it back to him. I put it in his hand. He unwraps it, takes one look, and his whole expression changes. His eyes go wide. He looks up at me and says, almost in a whisper, "She's on your left shoulder." A woman with long black hair and a white dress. He said it exactly like that, and I hadn't told him any of those details. Right then, I feel that cold, heavy pressure on my shoulder again, stronger than usual. He moves quickly. He lights incense, starts chanting, and lays out a bunch of Buddhist items. Little statues, candles, a bowl of water, some old yellowed cloth with script written all over it. He wraps the pendant in one of those cloths, tying it with red string while he's still chanting. Then he blesses me. He sprinkles water over my head, taps my shoulder, and tells me he's giving me protection, asking the spirits and the Buddha to keep me safe. After that day, things start to change. Within a week, I stop seeing her in my dreams. I stop seeing her in the corner of my room. The constant weight on my left shoulder fades away. The house feels lighter. I finally start sleeping more than a couple of hours at a time. Uncle Somchai tells me later that he sent the pendant back to Lao, to a temple, where they essentially exorcised it, removed the spirit bound to it. He explains that the pendant had been used in black magic. The spirit of a woman had been bound to it using oil rubbed from her dead body into the gold. He tells me that when I stopped carrying it, when I left it alone and ignored it, she grew angry and possessive. She wanted to consume me. A few weeks after that, he speaks with my dad. It turns out my dad had also been seeing her. She'd been messing with him too, appearing in their house, in his dreams, causing tension in his marriage. He gave me the pendant because I was single and he honestly thought it would give me good luck, maybe help my life move forward. He had no idea what was attached to it. So in the end, that's what it was. Not just a good luck charm, but a vessel. And what it brought me wasn't luck at all. It brought me a faceless woman with long black hair and a white dress who almost took everything from me. Welcome to Paranormal M. It feels amazing to be here doing what I love. How's your day going? Drop a comment and let me know. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting the channel. It really means a lot. I'm even happier knowing these paranormal stories help you unwind. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. Now, grab your headphones, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's story. And hey, don't forget to send in your own paranormal experiences too. So, picture this with me for a second. It's a rainy Thursday night, about 5 years ago. I'd canceled plans, decided I was done with people for the day, and I was just going to stay in, curl up in bed, and watch some show on my phone. You know those nights where the bed is the whole world? That was the mood. Now, normally when I'm alone, I don't really cook for myself. I'm a decent cook, but if it's just me, I'm usually a grab some crackers and cheese and call it dinner kind of person. But for whatever reason that night, I got this little burst of motivation, like, no, we're doing this properly. My roommate at the time, his name was Leo, was home too. He was this super intense, slightly weird musician/graphic artist type. He basically lived in his room or in the little studio attached to it. Door always closed, headphones always on. We were friendly, but he was very much a do not disturb kind of guy. So as far as I knew, he was locked away and busy. Anyway, I decide to cook myself something nice. I make this whole elaborate pasta situation. I'm talking water boiling, garlicky olive oil, veggies sizzling in the pan, zucchini, bell peppers, mushrooms, the works. I simmer a tomato sauce with herbs, add a little cream to make it silky, toss in the pasta, and plate it all up on this plain white dinner plate we had. Normal plate, normal rim, nothing fancy. It took me maybe 40 minutes, and I was weirdly proud of it. Like, look at you, cooking a real meal for yourself. I don't bother with the dishes. I just grab the plate with one hand, a fork and a folded paper towel with the other, and head to my room. I nudge my bedroom door closed with my foot, climb onto my full-sized bed. Yeah, not even a queen, just a full. And set the plate down almost in the middle of the bed, next to my phone that's propped up against a pillow. Now, my room has 2 doors. One door goes out to the kitchen and living room. The other door, on the opposite wall, opens to this short hallway that leads to the bathroom, and then out to a little back patio and garden area. That bathroom is literally like 3 steps from my door. I set my plate down, make sure my show is queued up, and then I realize I have to pee. Of course. So I slip out, leave both my bedroom doors open. Totally normal for me because, again, Leo rarely wandered into that side of the house, and I go to the bathroom. I don't even fully close the bathroom door. I'm gone for maybe, 10 seconds? 15 max. Just a quick pee, wash my hands, and I'm heading right back. I walk the few steps back into my room, already excited to dig into this pasta I lovingly crafted. And I stop. Because the bed is there, the phone is there, the fork is there, the folded paper towel is there, but the plate of food? Completely gone. Not just shifted or a little off to the side. Gone. Like it never existed. No crumbs, no sauce drips, nothing. I just stand there for a second, trying to make my brain catch up. My first thought is honestly that I'm being dramatic and forgetful. I'm like, okay, Mia, because that's my name, by the way. Maybe you only plan to bring the food in here, and you imagine the part where you actually did it. So I stand there, sniff the air, and I can still smell the pasta. The garlicky tomato smell is strong. It smells like it's right there. I'm doubting myself now. I go back to the kitchen to see if maybe I left the plate on the counter or the stove or something. Nothing. The pots and pans are there. The little splatters of sauce on the stove are there. But no plate. At this point, I start to feel that little prickle of unease. Not full-on fear, more like, okay, universe, what are we doing? The next thought I have is Leo messing with me? Which would be super out of character for him, but my brain is grasping for something normal. So I walk over to his side of the house and knock on his door. He opens it and he already looks annoyed, like he was deep in some project. He kind of squints at me and goes, "What's up, Mia? I'm working." I'm like, please don't think I'm crazy, but are you messing with me? Because something really bizarre just happened in my room. His expression shifts immediately from irritated to curious. His whole energy changes. What do you mean? What happened? So I explain. I made dinner, I set it on the bed, I went to pee, came back, plate gone, fork and napkin still there. He frowns and goes, "That's weird. Okay, let's go look." So he follows me to the kitchen where I show him the evidence of my cooking. Dirty pans, sauce still warm on the stove. And then we walk into my room, and I point at the spot on the bed where I swear the plate was. He goes, "Yeah, that's strange," and then starts helping me look around the room. We do a full sweep. Check under the bed, under the covers, behind the pillows, behind my nightstand. I even pull my blanket completely off the bed like maybe somehow it flipped the plate or something. Nothing. Then I look across the room, like 9 or 10 feet away, behind my laundry basket in the corner, and there it is. The plate, sitting upright on the floor behind the basket. I walk over and pick it up, and my stomach drops a little. All the food is gone. No pasta, no veggies, just a smear of red sauce on the plate. And the way the sauce looks, it's not like it's smeared by gravity or something falling. It looks like someone dragged their fingers across the plate, leaving streaks. Like when you wipe the last bit of frosting with your fingertips. Leo sees it and goes, "Okay, that's actually creepy." Now we're really confused, because if the food slid off the plate somehow, it would be on the floor. But there's nothing on the floor. No splatters, no spills, nothing. I'm starting to feel a little unsettled and, honestly, a little violated. Like, I put time and care into that meal, you know? We start searching for the food, because logically it has to be somewhere. Next to my bed, I have this small wicker wastebasket that I use only for paper. Sketches, notes, crumpled up doodles. I never put any actual trash in it, and I don't line it with a bag. It's just a bin full of paper balls and scraps. I look over at it, and for some reason my brain goes, "Check there." So I walk over, start gently lifting out the paper. On top, it's all the same stuff I tossed the night before. Crumpled white paper, colored scraps, a couple of sticky notes. And then, under that top layer of paper, there's my dinner, my pasta, my veggies, all of it, sitting in the bottom of the wastebasket. No sauce on the inside walls of the basket. None on the paper I pulled off the top. It looks like someone neatly took the paper out, placed the food in the bin, and then carefully put the paper back on top, without getting anything dirty. At that point, my brain just kind of glitches. Leo thinks I'm pranking him now. He looks at me and goes, "Okay, if this is a joke, it's not funny. Did you seriously do all this just to mess with me?" And I just break. I start crying. I don't cry a lot, but between the confusion and feeling like I wasn't being believed, and the fact that my nice little solo dinner got basically thrown away by some unseen force, it hit me hard. I'm like, why would I ruin my own dinner for a joke? I'd worked so hard on it. It felt mean, even if I couldn't see who did it. And he starts walking back to his room. I'm wiping my eyes, still standing by the wastebasket, when I hear his footsteps suddenly stop. Then immediately, I'm talking maybe 3 or 4 seconds later, he's back in my doorway. And his face is white. "Mia," he says, and his voice is tight. "Are you seriously messing with me? Because if you are, it's really not funny." I'm like, "Leo, I swear I'm not. What now?" He just says, "Come here," and motions for me to follow him. We walk back to his room, and his entire computer setup is gone. This man loves his computer. It's his lifeline. Music, art, games, everything. A little laptop, 2 speakers, a MIDI keyboard. It was all set up on this crate next to his mattress. Now, there's just the crate. No laptop, no speakers, no keyboard. It looks like someone carefully plucked the whole setup away. He starts panicking. No. He's checking under the blanket, behind the mattress, under the bed, nothing. We check the little connecting studio room, nothing. Then we move through to the laundry room in the back of the house. And there it is. His laptop is lying on its backside, screen closed and facing down on the floor. His speakers are on either side of it, also upside down. Everything is arranged almost neatly, like someone gently placed them there. This is 2 rooms away from his bed, maybe 25 or 30 feet, through at least one doorway and a narrow little hallway. There is absolutely no way he could have sprinted out of my room, unplugged and moved all that, arranged it like that, and made it back to my doorway in the handful of seconds it took him to reappear. We just stand there together, staring at his stuff on the laundry room floor in this weird formation. No sound, no footsteps, no doors creaking. Nothing got knocked over on the way. It's like it teleported there. At this point, the vibe has shifted from, we're confused, to, okay, something in this house is doing its own thing, and we are not in control. Leo is shaken. I'm shaken. There's nothing to really do about it, though. It's not like you can ground a ghost or put the house in timeout. Eventually, we just kind of give up on understanding it. He gathers his stuff and takes it back to his room, checking each piece like it might bite. I go back to mine and end up eating some sad little leftover snacks instead of my beautiful pasta. And as I'm sitting there, it hits me. Maybe whatever did that was actually trying to help me. Maybe there was something off in the food, bad veggies, something spoiled I didn't notice. Maybe, in some super weird way, something was like, nope, you're not eating that tonight. Is that true? I have no idea. But honestly, it felt a lot better to imagine some unseen roommate trying to save my life than to think something out there just decided to throw away my solo, hard-earned comfort dinner for fun. So yeah, that's the night my dinner vanished. My roommate's computer teleported, and both of us had to just quietly coexist with the fact that our house apparently had opinions. Make of it what you will. So, I want to tell you about something that happened to me last night, or actually, very early this morning, around midnight. I was in my living room, lights mostly off, just scrolling on my phone, when my friend Marco texted me. He was walking his dog past my place and wrote, "Hey, are you awake? There's someone sitting on your front steps, and your gate is wide open." That immediately felt wrong, because I always close that gate. It's almost a little ritual at this point. From inside the house, I couldn't see clearly. Everything outside was just shapes and shadows. So I got up, turned on the porch light, and opened the front door. By the time I did, whoever had been sitting on the steps wasn't there anymore. I could just make out a figure standing just beyond the gate, closer to the sidewalk. I stepped out onto the path, keeping the door half open behind me, phone pressed to my ear with Marco still on the line. As my eyes adjusted, I saw her, a woman standing a little down the street. I stayed there, on the porch, talking quietly into the phone while she walked slowly up and down the road. Her heels made this distinct, hollow sound against the asphalt. Clack, 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 echoing in the quiet. Every so often she'd stop and look at the houses further up, like she was searching for something, or someone. The way she moved was calm, almost casual, but there was something in the air that just felt off. After a few minutes, she started to drift closer. I tried to lower my voice, but it was obvious I was talking about her. You know when you're pretending you're not, but it's so clear you are? It was like that. She glanced at me, really noticing me for the first time, and then, in this calm but incredibly unsettling tone, she said, "Don't be afraid of me. I'm just sad. I'm waiting for someone." Her voice shook as she spoke, like she was trying very hard not to cry. It wasn't aggressive at all, but it wasn't comforting either. It felt like standing next to a live wire, quiet but buzzing. I kept a bit of distance and told her, as gently as I could, "You can't come inside my house." She gave this small, tired smile and said, "But the gate was open," and took a couple more steps closer, as if that explained everything. That's the part that really got under my skin. The way she said it, like an open gate was an invitation, like the house itself had called her in. I felt this very clear instinct kick in, and I said more firmly, "No, the gate wasn't open. Please stay back." She stared at me for a second, her expression strange. Hurt, maybe, or annoyed, I couldn't tell. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "Don't stare at me." And that was it. She turned around and walked away, the same slow, steady pace, heels tapping against the road, her whole presence oddly calm but somehow heavy at the same time. I remember exactly what she looked like. She had shoulder-length dark brown hair, a pale blue dress that fell just below her knees, and a light jacket over it, even though the night was warm. She carried a medium-sized handbag tucked close to her side, and those heels. They didn't look particularly fancy, just plain, but that sound they made is stuck in my head. Now, about the gate. I know I shut it. I'm almost obsessive about it. And it's not the kind of gate that just swings open if the wind feels dramatic. One side is fixed into the ground with a heavy metal pin, and you really have to pull and shove to move it. It usually scrapes a bit when you do. After she walked away from me, I went back inside, locked the door, and looked out through the window. Marco stayed on the phone, giving me a kind of running commentary from his place further down the street. He told me she kept pacing up and down the road for another 15-20 minutes. Same slow walk, same path. Sometimes she'd stop under a streetlight. Sometimes she'd stare at a house. And then, at some point, she just wasn't there anymore. He looked away briefly, and when he checked again, she was gone. I know this could have been just a distressed person, maybe going through something difficult. And part of me honestly feels sad for her. The way she said she was waiting for someone sounded so desperate and lonely. But at the same time, there was this energy around her that didn't feel normal. It's hard to explain. It wasn't just the situation. It was the way the air felt, the strange mix of calm and unease. The open gate that shouldn't have been open. The way she spoke, like she was half in this moment and half somewhere else entirely. I'm sharing this with you because I can't quite shake it off. I keep replaying it in my mind, wondering if anyone else has met someone like that. A stranger who appears where they shouldn't be, right at the boundary between your home and the outside world, carrying a presence that feels different. I don't know what that was. Maybe it was just a sad woman on a strange night. Maybe it was something more. All I know is that the way she looked at me and the way that gate stood open will stay with me for a long time. You know, I don't usually talk about this stuff, but since we're already on the topic of creepy retail stories, let me share two that really stuck with me. Both came from friends of mine who used to work in different stores. So first, there's my friend Marco. He used to work the late shift at this 24-hour mini-mart on the corner of a really busy intersection. From the outside, it looked totally normal. Bright lights, loud traffic, people stumbling in for snacks at 2 a.m. But the staff all knew. The stockroom and the tiny break room at the back were not normal. Years before Marco got hired, there'd been an older employee. Everyone just called him Tito Ben. He did double shifts all the time. One night, he lay down on the old couch in the break room to rest, and just never woke up. After that, people said he never really left. Marco told me that on quiet nights, when he'd go to the back alone to get more stock, he'd sometimes see a man sitting on that same couch, in the store uniform, head slightly bowed like he was trying to nap. At first, Marco thought it was one of the senior staff resting, so he'd say, "Kuya, sorry, I need to get past." But the guy would never answer. And then, when Marco looked a second time, the man's face would be wrong. Not bloody or anything dramatic, just blurred out, like someone smudged his whole face with a thumb. The uniform logo was clear, the name patch was clear, but the features were missing. The manager even set up a small altar near the stockroom door. A framed photo of a saint, some candles, a dish with rock salt, and fresh flowers every Monday. They'd light a candle at the start of the night shift and quietly say, "Please let us work in peace. Please rest." And still, weird things kept happening. Sometimes cartons would already be stacked when nobody remembered doing it. Sometimes the roll-up metal door at the back would rattle like someone was trying to come in, even though it was locked and chained. And at least twice, Marco said he felt someone brush past him in the narrow hallway, like a person squeezing through. But when he turned, he was alone. The last straw for him was one night around 3 a.m. He went to the break room to grab his tumbler, and through the little glass panel in the door, he saw a man standing inside, facing the wall. Store uniform. Same build as the old photos of Tito Ben. Marco thought it was just one of his coworkers. He pushed the door open, saying, "Bro, you okay?" The lights flicked off for half a second. Just a blink. When they flicked back on, the room was empty. No footsteps, no sound of the door closing. Nothing. Marco checked the CCTV later with the supervisor, and on the footage, you could see Marco talking into an empty room. He quit 2 weeks after that. He told me, "Look, I can handle rude customers and graveyard shifts, but not someone who died on the couch I'm supposed to nap on." Now, the second story is from my friend Leila. She used to work at this big, fancy bookstore in the city. 6 floors if you count the basement. You know the type. Quiet music, perfect lighting, cafe on one level, and every shelf so neatly arranged it almost feels like a library. But according to the staff, that place was one giant haunted house with air conditioning. The security guards were the first ones to complain. Down by the service entrance on the first floor, near where deliveries came in, they'd sometimes see what they called a replay. Years ago, there'd been a fight between 2 warehouse guys. No one talked about the details, but everyone knew it ended with one of them getting stabbed. There was no sound, no blood, just this silent, flickering scene that played out for a few seconds and then vanished. The CCTV never caught it clearly, just weird distortions or flashes of static. Then there was the second floor, the kids and teens section. You'd think that would be the friendliest area, right? Bright colors, storybooks, stuffed toys by the reading corner. But that floor had the most sightings. Staff members often reported seeing a little girl in a pale yellow dress, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with a ribbon in her hair. She'd stand near the picture books, looking up like she was trying to read the covers. If you approached her and asked, "Hi, where are your parents?" she'd just turn slightly, and then be gone, like someone switched her off. There was also a boy and an older man who appeared together. People described them as wearing old, worn-out clothes, like they were from the countryside. The boy in shorts and slippers, the old man in a faded long-sleeve shirt and a straw hat he'd sometimes hold in his hands. They'd be seen walking slowly between the taller shelves, almost like they were browsing. Sometimes a customer would move aside to give them space, then realize a moment later that no one had actually passed by. Lila told me that more than one employee had reported feeling a light tug on their shirt on that floor, only to turn around and find nobody there. But children's laughter would drift in from somewhere, even when the floor was empty. Now, the 4th floor, that's where things got really unnerving. That floor had all the art books, design stuff, and some office supplies. It was quieter, and the shelves were tall. Staff believed a shapeshifter spirit lingered there. It didn't just appear as a random figure. It liked to copy the employees. Imagine this. You're restocking notebooks, and you see your coworker, Abby, walking toward the stairwell. You say, "Hey, can you help me with this box later?" And Abby nods and keeps walking. 5 minutes later, you bump into the real Abby coming up the stairs, holding a stack of price tags, and she says, "I've been in the basement this whole time. Why?" So many people had experiences like that the staff made their own rule. During closing time, nobody stays alone on the 4th floor. They finish their tasks fast, switch off the lights, and go down together. No lingering, no, "Oh, I'll just stay a bit to straighten the shelves." If someone looked like they were still up there after the lights were off, everyone double-checked who was actually accounted for downstairs before going back up. Funny enough, Lila said the 3rd floor felt the safest. That was the floor with most of the general fiction, self-help, and some magazines. As far as she knew, nobody had a clear ghost story from there. People joked that maybe the ghosts just weren't into bestsellers. The basement, though, the archive and clearance area, had its own cold spots, but Lila tried not to think about that too much. So yeah, those are the 2 stories that made me look at convenience stores and bookstores a little differently. I'm honestly curious, if you've ever worked in retail or know someone who has, what's the creepiest, ghostly experience you've heard about or actually gone through in a store? So, let me tell you about this story a close friend of mine, Rafi, shared with me a while back. He used to work in this big, slightly run-down department store in the city. 3 floors, flickering lights, that kind of place. The 3rd floor was the quietest, mostly office space and overstock, and according to everyone who worked there, it also had something else. Now, the staff all talked about it like it was normal, almost like a weird in-joke, a shape-shifting spirit that wandered around the 3rd floor. People said it liked to copy employees, take their appearance, their uniforms, even the way they walked. You'd pass by someone you swore you recognized, maybe even call their name, and only later find out they'd been on a different shift, or hadn't been in the building at all. At first, new hires thought it was just hazing. You know, welcome to the team, here's our resident ghost. But pretty soon, most of them had at least one moment that made them think twice. One of those people was a new supervisor we'll call Leo. When Leo first started, the team warned him right away. Just so you know, the 3rd floor is weird. If you see someone up there who's not supposed to be working, don't panic. It might not be, well, a person. Leo just laughed it off. He was practical, no nonsense, the type who double-checks inventory and corrects labels that are slightly crooked. Ghosts were not on his list of things to worry about. But that changed pretty quickly. One night, the store was closing. Most of the lights were already off, and it was that in-between time when the building feels empty, but not quite asleep. Leo was on the 3rd floor alone, trying to finish an incident report. He'd had a rough day, short-staffed, a customer complaint, a delivery that arrived late, and he just wanted to get the paperwork done so he could go home. He was hunched over his desk, staring at the computer screen, when he got that prickly feeling on the back of his neck. You know, that sense that someone's watching you. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw someone standing near the far end of the room, just before the hallway that led to the stockroom. It looked like one of the senior staff, a guy named Andrew. Same haircut, same uniform, even the same slightly slouched posture. At first, Leo didn't think much of it. He just called out, "Hey Andrew, you still here?" No response. The figure just stood there, completely still. Leo turned back to his work, annoyed but trying to ignore it, until something tugged at his memory. He paused, then frowned. Andrew had messaged the group chat earlier that day. He'd taken emergency leave to look after his sick daughter. He was never even in the building. Leo slowly looked up again. This time, the figure had moved. It was walking away, slow, deliberate steps, heading toward one of the desks lined with office equipment. Label printers, staplers, a small scanner. piles of forms. It didn't look confused or lost. It looked purposeful. And then, right in front of Leo, as clear as day, it reached the desk and, with one forceful sweep of its arm, shoved almost everything onto the floor. The crash echoed across the third floor. Papers flew. The scanner clattered. A metal pen holder rolled away and hit a cabinet with a sharp ting. Leo shot up from his chair, heart pounding. But here's the thing. He wasn't just scared. He was exhausted, frustrated, fed up with the day, with the job, with the weird stories, all of it. And something in him just snapped. Leo grabbed the nearest thing he could find, a thick, heavy inventory binder, and without thinking twice, he hurled it at the figure. He watched it hit. The binder didn't pass through thin air or sail harmlessly to the wall. It smacked right into the figure's chest with a dull thud, like it had landed on something solid. The sound made his skin crawl, and that's when he lost it. He started shouting, not in fear, but in this exhausted, furious voice that came from somewhere deep inside. "You picked the worst night to screw with me, you hear me? I am not in the mood for this. You break anything else, and I swear I will find a way to get rid of you for good." He swore. A lot. He admitted later he probably used every curse word he knew, stringing them together in ways that didn't even make sense. But he meant every word. He wasn't asking it to stop. He was warning it. As he advanced, the figure started backing away. Step by step, it moved toward the far corner of the room, near a stack of unused display racks. The light from the emergency exit sign cast this sickly glow, and for a second, Leo could see its face clearly. It looked like Andrew, but wrong. The expression was blank, almost bored. No anger, no fear, nothing. Just watching. And then, right as it reached the corner, it shifted. Not like someone turning around, but like a reflection on water getting disturbed. The edges of its body blurred, its outline wavered, and it simply thinned out and faded until there was nothing there at all. No dramatic sound, no smoke, just gone. Leo stood there, breathing hard, binder still on the floor a few feet in front of him. The room felt heavy, like the air had thickened. He waited, half expecting something else to move, another crash, another figure appearing behind him. Nothing. He stayed a few more minutes, picking up the scattered office supplies, muttering under his breath. Then, before heading to the stairs, he turned back toward that corner and said, out loud, "I'm not afraid of you. You try that again, I'll make sure you really regret it. This is my floor now. Got it?" After that night, according to Rafi, everything changed. The third floor used to have these little incidents. Footsteps when no one was up there, shadows crossing doorways, someone calling your name from down the hall. Occasionally, people would swear they saw a coworker who later turned out not to have been there at all. But after Leo's outburst, it all just stopped. No more lookalikes roaming the corridor. No more desks getting messed up. The weird cold spots people complained about, they went away too. The third floor was still a little eerie. Big buildings at night always are. But that specific presence wasn't felt anymore. Rafi said that, in the weeks that followed, whenever someone joked about the shapeshifter, one of the older staff would just shrug and say, "Talk to Leo. I think he scared it off." And Leo? He never bragged about it. If anyone asked, he'd just say, "Something was messing with my work. I told it to knock it off." And that was that. Hearing that story really made me think. We always talk about fear when it comes to strange things like that. Hauntings, spirits, whatever you want to call them. But sometimes, I wonder if there's something powerful in that moment when fear gets pushed aside by sheer exhaustion and anger. When someone decides, "I'm done being scared. I'm standing my ground." So now I'm curious about you. Have you ever been in a situation supernatural or not, where you were just so fed up that you stopped being afraid and finally stood up to whatever was bothering you? Or do you know someone who reacted that way when something strange happened? So, let me start by saying this. In my family, my dad, Miguel, always treated my abilities like they were just another part of me, like having brown eyes or curly hair. My mom, Elena, on the other hand, hardcore skeptic. If she couldn't measure it, read about it in a manual, or buy it at a hardware store, it didn't exist. And yet, there were a few things even she couldn't talk herself out of. I was about 4 when we moved into this little old house in San Jose, California. It was one of those places with creaky wooden floors and a fireplace that looked more decorative than functional. One night, my parents were in the middle of one of their classic arguments in the living room. You know the kind. Voices low, sharp, circling around the same old sore spots. I was playing with my blocks near the fireplace when it happened. Out of nowhere, there was this crack, like something snapping inside the wall. A loose brick from the fireplace shifted and dropped straight through the floorboards with this ugly, splintering sound. It didn't just fall. It punched a hole right through into the crawl space below. My mom jumped back, hand over her mouth. Later, she told me that in that exact moment, she felt an icy wind wrap around her, like someone had draped a freezing wet blanket over her shoulders. And over that, she heard 2 little girls crying, right in her ear, like they were standing behind her. She wouldn't go anywhere near that fireplace after that. My dad ended up covering the entire thing with wood paneling, so she didn't have to look at it. He was shaken, sure, but he and we were more used to things like that. It was just another weird night in a long line of weird nights. It was in that same house where I met the family that lived there before us. Well, lived is doing a lot of work in that sentence. They were a really gentle family, honestly. The father, he told me his name was Thomas, had this calm, tired kindness about him. The mom, Maria, always seemed busy, even in death. I'd see her fuzzing over invisible dust on the shelves, or straightening objects that weren't actually moving. They had a few kids. I never quite got all their names right. They felt more like a blur of giggles and sad eyes. I'd sit in the hallway with my toys, and they'd gather around me, watching as I played. Sometimes they'd reach out, not quite touching, like they were trying to remember what it felt like to hold something solid. The strange part, the part that always stuck with me, was the way they looked. They were mostly like regular people, just slightly see-through, a bit faded at the edges. But I could see the faint marks of what had happened to them. Bruises, burns, a twisted arm, things that felt too heavy for a kid my age to understand. I didn't have the words then. I just knew they were hurt and that they were stuck. One afternoon, Thomas knelt down beside me while I was playing by the back window. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. He said, "Most of us are under the house." I remember blinking at him. Like, under the floor? He nodded slowly and pointed toward the side yard. "I'm over there, in a box, under the concrete by the fence, the part that looks wrong." Of course, I was a curious kid. You can't tell a 4-year-old something like that and expect them to just shrug it off. So one day, when my mom was busy in the kitchen and my dad was in the garage, I slipped outside with a little plastic shovel. I remember this mix of excitement and dread sitting in my chest. I knew I'd found it. But the concrete pinned the rest of it down, and no matter how much I dug, I couldn't get more than that one corner uncovered. My dad found me out there eventually, absolutely filthy, and carried me back inside before I could do any more damage. Not all the spirits there were kind, though. After the brick incident, things escalated. Not dramatically all at once, more like the house was slowly clearing its throat, getting ready to speak up. That's when the woman in black and white started showing up in the kitchen. The first time I saw her, I was sitting at the table with a bowl of cereal. The room went suddenly heavy and quiet, the way it does right before a storm. I looked up, and she was just there, near the sink. She was dressed in what looked like an old-fashioned uniform, dark skirt, white blouse, some kind of apron. Her face was pale and wet with tears, and her shoulders shook like she was sobbing, but no sound came out. She turned away from me and walked across the kitchen, her skirt brushing the floor without actually touching it, and disappeared straight into the wall that led to the garage. Then she did it again the next day, and again, and again. It got to the point where my dad couldn't take it anymore. He didn't want my mom or me constantly catching her out of the corner of our eye, so he took an old sheet and tacked it up over the kitchen entryway. It was a ridiculous solution, but somehow it helped. Out of sight, out of mind. At least a little. Still, I could feel her there, repeating that same sad walk over and over. The backyard, though, that was the worst. From the outside, it looked like a kid's dream. There was a great swing set, a little jungle gym, and this big rectangle of concrete with weird patterns in it where I could ride my tricycle or wobble around on my roller skates. On paper, it was perfect. In reality, I wanted nothing to do with it. The air back there always felt wrong to me. Heavy. Watching. If my parents told me to go play outside, I'd hover as close to the back door as I could and beg my dad or my older cousin Javier to come sit with me. If I had to be there alone, I'd last maybe 2 minutes before making some excuse to go back in. Behind our yard was another house, and along the shared fence, things liked to gather. I'd see shapes there, figures peeking between the slats or leaning against the boards. They weren't like Thomas and his family. There was a different energy to them, something sharp, something hungry. They would call out to me without moving their mouths, trying to get my attention, trying to start conversations I wanted no part of. I never answered them. Everything in me screamed not to. Sometimes the temperature would suddenly drop. One second I'd be sweating in the California sun, and the next, I'd be wrapping my arms around myself, teeth chattering. The wind would pick up, bending the trees until their branches scratched and scraped against each other with this awful, dry, whispering sound. And then the world would go quiet. No cars, no birds. Even the big dog next door, this usually hyper, bark-at-every-leaf shepherd mix, would go completely silent. He'd just stand there, stiff, staring at the fence with his ears flat, like he saw the same things I did and wanted nothing to do with them either. In those moments, I'd feel all the little hairs on my arms stand straight up. I'd stand frozen on the concrete, skates or no skates, and count my breaths until I could move again. As soon as I could, I'd bolt back into the house, heart pounding, trying to act normal so my parents wouldn't ask too many questions. My dad and I, we learned to live with it. We made jokes. We adjusted. We moved a sheet here and a piece of wood there. My mom, she tried so hard to explain it all away. But every once in a while, I'd catch her glancing at the covered fireplace or hesitating near that kitchen doorway, and I'd know. Even the skeptics hear the crying sometimes. So, let me tell you about the night I realized I could see things I really did not want to see. My family's home base is in Lafayette, Louisiana, but a couple of weeks ago my parents called and said, "Hey, we're heading up to Chicago for a few days. Mostly work, but we'll squeeze in a little vacation. Come meet us." Since I live in Boston now, I figured, why not turn it into a mini getaway and arrive a day earlier than them? I booked this hotel on the edge of the loop, not far from the river. Nothing fancy, Just one of those business hotels you forget the name of as soon as you check out. The big landmark for me was this huge Target across the street and a bunch of late-night food spots sprinkled around. I got into the area around 7 p.m. First thing I did was drop my luggage in the room. Just tossed my bag by the bed, checked that the key card worked, that sort of thing. Since I wasn't seeing my parents until the next morning, I thought, okay, solo dinner tonight. That's when I realized I'd forgotten my phone charger. Of course. So I headed out, walking toward the Target. As I'm crossing the street, this group comes toward me. A few women dressed like they just walked out of some after-hours club. Glittery dresses, heels too high to be practical, and a handful of guys hovering around them. They weren't exactly subtle, laughing too loud, talking over each other, just big energy. The weird part was how they walked. They sort of spread out across the sidewalk, like a moving wall. I kept thinking, should I step aside? Are they going to part or just run into me? But right before we would have crossed paths, they all abruptly turned off toward a side street, not even glancing at me. I shrugged it off, went into Target, grabbed a charger, paid, and then picked up something quick to eat from a Walgreens nearby. A sad little sandwich, a snack, and a drink. Back at the hotel, I ate in my room, turned on the TV, and let some random cooking show play in the background while I scrolled on my half-charged phone. Time slipped by, and before I knew it, it was close to 11 p.m. And of course, after an hour of watching people make perfect ramen and fancy burgers, I started to get hungry again. I remembered seeing another late-night place, this tiny 24-hour deli a block from the hotel, so I decided to go grab something small. Nothing dramatic, just, I could use some chips or something. I took the elevator down to the lobby and walked out through the revolving door. And the moment I stepped out onto the sidewalk, I saw them. The same group from earlier. The glittery dresses, the guys lingering around them. Same faces, same outfits. But this time, everything felt off. They were standing half in the street, half on the curb, yelling at each other. Why? Why? Over and over, voices cracking. Why me? Why? It was loud enough that people were glancing over and then immediately looking away, pretending not to see anything. I tried to ignore them, honestly. I kept walking, eyes down, thinking, wow, they're really going at it. And also, man, they're annoying. I didn't want to get involved. But then the shouting got sharper, like it hit a nerve. Why? Why? Something in me slipped, and without meaning to, I glanced over. The second I made eye contact, a cold rush went down my back. All of them, every single one of them shouting, why, had turned their heads and were staring straight at me. I stopped walking. My body just locked up. One of the women, the one in this short, sparkly red dress, suddenly screamed, why? It was so loud and raw, my heart started racing. My brain went into overdrive. Should I run? Should I call the cops? Should I yell for help? All of that flashed through my mind in maybe a second. These people are not alive. In that split second when I'd looked away and then looked back, they had changed. The guy on the edge of the group, his shirt was soaked in what looked like blood. One of the women just ended at the waist. From the hips down, there was nothing. Another figure behind them looked like a burnt silhouette, like a human shape made of charcoal, skin cracked and blackened. No one around them reacted. Cars drove past. A couple walked by, barely glancing in that direction like nothing was wrong. Then the woman in red said, in this hoarse, broken voice, why? Why did I have to die? And I felt the words go straight through me. It was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that so clearly. I don't know what possessed me, but I actually answered her, out loud. I said, it kind of looks like you already died. Maybe you'd feel better if you moved on? As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. They all just stared at me, faces twisted, repeating, "Why? Why? Why?" That was enough. I turned around and bolted back toward the hotel. I ran through the doors, hit the elevator button like my life depended on it, and jumped inside the moment it opened. The elevator had these glass doors and a glass back, so you could see out into the hallway as you went up. Very chic, normally. That night, it felt like the worst design decision ever made. The elevator started rising. 2nd floor. 3rd floor. As we passed the 4th floor, my eyes flicked toward the glass without me wanting them to. They were there. The group was standing right in front of where the doors would have opened on that floor. The woman in red, the half-body girl, the charred shape, all of them staring in at me as the elevator slid by. I almost started crying right then. The elevator kept going. 5th floor. They were there again. Same positions, same hollow eyes, but now their mouths were moving, whispering just loud enough for me to hear through the glass. Why? Soft, dragging, like the word had weight. By the time the doors opened on the 7th floor, my floor, I didn't wait for them to fully slide apart. I squeezed through and sprinted down the hallway, fumbling my keycard at the door like in a bad horror movie. Once I was inside, I locked everything. Door, latch, whichever extra thing I could slide or turn. I turned on every light. I didn't even bother with the cooking show this time. I put on some late-night talk show rerun, something ridiculous and loud, just so there was noise that wasn't my own heartbeat. I sat on the bed shaking, telling myself, "You're fine. You're just tired. You imagined it." Over and over. At some point, pure exhaustion knocked me out. When I woke up, sunlight was pouring into the room. The terror felt smaller. Not gone, but like a bad dream that dissolves in daylight. I packed my things, got ready to check out, and took the elevator down. As we started descending, I told myself, "Don't look. Just don't." But curiosity is cruel. We glided past the 6th floor. Nothing. Then the 5th. That's when I noticed dark streaks on the wall next to the elevator doors. Grayish, blackened marks smeared around the frame, like burn or smoke stains. My stomach dropped. And then we reached the 4th floor. There was this split second of silence, and then, bang! The woman in the red dress slammed against the glass from the outside, right at my eye level. Her skin was burned and peeling now, her arms streaked with something dark. Her eyes were pitch black, no whites, no pupils, just two empty, bottomless pits, and they locked straight onto mine. She snarled, "Why me? Why not you?" And as I watched, her body seemed to sink down, disappearing into the floor like it was water. One moment she was pressed against the glass. The next, there was nothing there. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby like everything was normal. I stepped out and just stood there in the middle of the floor, my suitcase in my hand, completely stunned. People were checking out, grabbing coffee, scrolling their phones. No one had heard the bang. No one had seen her. As I walked toward the front desk, one thought kept looping through my head. Do ghosts even show up this early in the morning? But what won't leave my mind, even now, are her eyes. Those completely black, hollow-looking eyes, filled with anger and hurt, like she was stuck in the exact moment her life ended. Sometimes I wonder what happened in that building. Was there a fire? A crash? Something violent on those middle floors? I don't know. I've tried to look it up, but part of me is almost afraid of finding out. Anyway, that's the story my friend Jordan told me. And the way he looked when he said, "Why not you?" I still get chills just remembering it. So, when I was a kid, maybe 7 or 8, I had this constant feeling that I wasn't alone. Not like, oh, I have a big imagination, but this heavy, prickly sense that something was right behind me, just out of sight. I'd be playing on the floor or reading in bed, and suddenly feel like someone was watching me from the corner of the room. The hair on my arms would stand up, my heart would start racing, and I'd freeze, just sure that if I turned around too fast I'd see something. Nights were the worst. I was terrified of the dark and of being left alone in a room. I'd make my mom leave the hallway light on, and even then I'd lie there, staring at the doorway, feeling like someone was standing just inside the shadow. Sometimes the air around me would feel so charged, like static electricity waiting to jump off skin, and I'd swear someone was standing right next to the bed, leaning over me. One night, it got very real. I jolted awake, no idea why, and instantly knew I was awake, not dreaming. And there, right beside my bed, was a woman in a chair. The weird thing was, my room didn't have a chair. But there she was, sitting in this old wooden armchair like it had always been there. She had silver hair pinned up in a loose bun, glasses low on her nose, and she was quietly crocheting something pale and soft. A shawl, maybe. The yarn rested on her lap, and the chair rocked in this slow, gentle rhythm. She didn't look mean at all. If anything, she looked kind. There was this faint little smile on her face, almost like she was watching over me, just keeping me company while I slept. But you can imagine, I was a terrified kid. So the only thing my body knew how to do was scream. I shrieked, loud and sharp, and the second I did, she and the chair were gone. Just gone. I was sitting upright in bed, heart pounding, staring at the exact empty space where she'd been. The room was exactly how it always was. No chair, no yarn, no old woman. But I knew, with that awful clarity you get in those moments, that I had been wide awake. After that, I completely unraveled. I started having panic attacks, real ones. I'd refuse to sleep alone. I'd cry if the lights were off. I kept insisting to my parents that someone, something, was following me, that there was a presence in my room. I was so on edge that even a creak in the floorboards could send me over the edge. My parents were, honestly, they were exhausted and worried. They tried everything, night lights, music, checking under the bed, checking the closet, staying with me until I fell asleep. Nothing helped. I couldn't calm down. Finally, one night, my mom sat me down at the kitchen table. She looked at me, and I could see on her face that she was trying to figure out how to say something that would make sense to a scared little kid. She said, very gently, "Maybe it was a ghost." You know, just casually. And for some reason, instead of making it worse, it made everything click for me. A ghost. A someone, not just bad feelings. She told me that if it was a ghost, it probably didn't want to hurt me, that some spirits just hang around. And then she told me there was a way to make it stop bothering me. She said, if you don't want it there, you have to tell it. Out loud. You set a boundary. You're allowed to do that. Now, as a kid, I took my mom's words like scripture. So I marched back into my bedroom, the one that always felt full of that strange presence, and I decided I was going to end it. I don't want you to follow me anymore. I don't want to see you. I don't want you in my room. Please leave me alone. I said it again, louder that time. I remember the sweat running down my back, the way my throat felt dry and tight. I just stood there, hands balled up, repeating in my head, "Go away, go away, go away." Then I waited. I cracked one eye open and looked around, half expecting something dramatic to happen. A gust of wind, a light flicker, something. But the room was just quiet, ordinary. I stood there a little longer, listening to the silence, feeling the air around me. And very slowly, I realized something. That heavy, prickly feeling I'd carried for so long was just gone. The room felt lighter. I felt lighter. For the first time in a long time, I could take a deep breath without that tightness in my chest. From that night on, things changed. I still got spooked sometimes, what kid doesn't? But that constant sense of being hunted, stalked, watched, it never came back in the same way. I grew up, I got older, and that whole chapter of my life sort of faded into the weird childhood stuff category in my mind. Fast forward to me as a young woman. I went to visit my grandmother one weekend. She lived in this small, cozy house that always smelled faintly of lavender and old books. At some point, she pulled out this big, heavy photo album from her living room cabinet, one of those old ones with the thick pages and plastic sheet covers that crinkle when you turn them. She said, "Come here, I want to show you what it was like when I was little." So we sat side by side on the couch, flipping through these sepia-toned photos of her family farm, fields, animals, the house she grew up in. There were faces of relatives whose names I kept forgetting as she told me stories about them. Who married who was a troublemaker, who baked the best pies. Then we turned a page, and my eyes landed on one particular photo. It was a picture of a front porch. A few people were standing around, men in suspenders, women in simple dresses, but in the middle of the frame, there was a woman sitting in a chair. My breath caught in my throat. She was sitting in a wooden chair, her ankles crossed, with an unfinished blanket or shawl draped over her knees. In her hands were knitting needles, frozen mid-stitch. Her hair was pulled back in that same kind of soft bun, and she had this almost invisible smile on her face, small, gentle, like she knew a secret but wasn't going to tell. And the way she was looking at the camera, it felt exactly like the way the woman in my room had looked at me. My heart skipped, and for a second it felt like it forgot how to beat altogether. My mouth went dry. I pointed at the woman in the photo, my finger actually trembling a little, and I managed to croak out, Who is that?" My grandmother squinted at the picture, then said casually, "Oh, that's my grandmother. Your great-great-grandma Anna. Why?" I just stared. It was her, the woman from the chair. Older, grainier, locked in a photograph from decades before I was born, but still, unmistakably her. So I told my grandmother the story. The panic, the presence, the woman in the chair, the crocheting, that night I screamed. I spilled everything, all in this breathless rush. My grandmother listened quietly, her eyes soft, and when I finished, she let out this little chuckle and a sigh. "Well," she said, "she's still making her rounds then." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She looked off toward the hallway, like she could almost see someone standing there. "She still visits me sometimes," my grandmother added. "I don't see her the way you two did. I just feel the edge of the bed dip, or a little tap on my shoulder when I'm alone in the kitchen. I say hello, and then I get on with my day." Then she looked back at me and smiled, very gently. "Some of us," she said, "just have the sight a little stronger. But she's family. She isn't here to hurt you." And sitting there, with that old photo album on my lap and my grandmother's hand resting on top of it, I felt something settle inside me. That childhood terror, that sense of being hunted, it shifted into something else. Not exactly comfort, but recognition. Like all along, I hadn't been followed by some nameless, faceless thing. I'd been watched over by a woman in a chair who loved knitting and who apparently never quite stopped checking in on her family. So, hey, let me just tell this the way it happened, okay? This was a few years back, but I can still feel it in my chest when I think about it. It was late. One of those warm nights that sits on your skin, and I was over at my neighbor's place. Everyone on our street calls her Aunt Mira, even though she's not actually anybody's aunt. She's older, tiny, always smelling like tea and wood smoke, and the kind of person who shows up at your door with soup before you even know you're sick. There were 4 of us in her kitchen that night. We had the windows cracked open, a pot of chamomile on the table, just talking. Silly stuff, nothing deep. It was one of those slow evenings where you feel safe and bored in the best way. And then we heard music. Not phone music, not some car going by with the bass up too high. It sounded live. There were drums, and what I swear was a fiddle or maybe a violin, and this low humming like a choir that can't quite remember the words. It wasn't loud, but it was clear, like it was coming from the backyard and very far away at the same time. I remember the hairs on my arms standing up, and before I could say anything, Aunt Mira just went very still. Her hand stopped halfway to her teacup. She glanced toward the back door and said, very softly, "Don't go outside." Just like that. No explanation. I kinda laughed, like, what? Why? You know when you think someone's being superstitious and you're trying not to be rude? That was me. But the look on her face shut me right up. I've seen that woman burn her fingers on a hot pan without flinching. She looked scared. The music kept going, slow and circling and strange, and we drifted to the kitchen window that looked out over her yard. Behind her house, there's this empty lot, just grass and a couple of trees, usually nothing interesting except stray cats. That night, though, there was this low haze lying over the ground. Not thick, not movie-style fog, just a pale, drifting mist, glowing a little in the moonlight. And in that mist, there were shapes. At first, I honestly thought it was kids, like teenagers doing some kind of weird dance prank or TikTok thing, I don't know. But the longer I stared, the less sense it made. They weren't solid. That's the part I still hate thinking about. They looked like people someone had sketched in smoke. You could see the trees through them when they moved. Some of them were wrong. One had an arm that faded out halfway down. Another didn't seem to be walking so much as gliding, just a few inches above the ground. And one, I will never forget this. One shape was swaying to the music with no clear head at all, just shoulders and that dark, empty space above them where it should have been. In the center of all of this were 2 clearer figures, standing side by side like a couple. The man looked like he was in an old-fashioned suit, the kind you see in black and white wedding photos. The woman was in something light, maybe not pure white, but a pale dress that moved like it was underwater. They were more solid than the rest, but even they looked faded, like memories someone had tried to hold on to too long. The others were circling them, stepping and turning in time with the music. They didn't look angry or wild. That almost made it worse. It felt calm. Calm and completely wrong. Beside me, I heard Aunt Mira whisper, almost to herself, "It's their wedding again." My stomach dropped. "Again?" I asked her. "What do you mean, again?" She shook her head, like she'd already said too much. "They won't come in while I have guests," she murmured. "Just stay here, please. Don't call out to them. Don't answer if they call you." 2 of my friends were with us. Jonah, who jokes about everything, and Lila, who always wants to prove things aren't scary. Jonah snorted and said, "Come on, this is obviously someone with a projector or something. Maybe a speaker in the lot." Lila nodded, already halfway toward the door. "Yeah, I'm gonna go see how they're doing this. It's actually kind of cool." Aunt Mira stepped in front of them. I've never seen her move that fast. "Don't," she said. Her voice cracked a little. Please, children, don't go out there. Not tonight. Jonah rolled his eyes. We'll be fine, I promise. 2 minutes. If it's ghosts, I'll bring one back for tea, yeah? He grinned at her, but she didn't smile. I am not joking, she said. They remember who steps into their circle. I could see his expression waver, just a little, but pride is a stupid thing. He shrugged her off gently. Lila squeezed my shoulder and said, Relax, we'll prove it's some creepy neighbor with a sound system. You'll feel better. I didn't follow. I should have grabbed them, yelled, something, but I didn't. I just stood there with my hand on the back of a chair, watching out the window. They walked across the yard, side by side. The grass was still, the air too warm for that hour. The music kept going, and then, just as they reached the edge of the mist, it stopped. Cut off. One beat, and everything went silent. All the figures turned at once. I can't explain how something half made of fog can turn, but they did. Every smoky outline, every broken limb, every blurred face turned toward Jonah and Lila. Even the headless one shifted like it was looking straight at them. Then they moved. They didn't rush or leap. They just drifted, all together, toward my friends. The mist rose up, thicker, wrapping around the two of them like someone pulling curtains closed. I heard myself say, Guys? Like they could hear me. My voice sounded so small. For 1 second, literally 1 second, they were silhouettes in the haze, and then the fog folded over itself. The music came back, a little louder, like someone had turned the volume up. When the mist cleared, Jonah and Lila were gone. No scream, no struggle, no falling, no running. Just gone. One heartbeat they were there, next heartbeat they weren't. The circle was complete again, moving around the couple as if nothing had happened. I don't remember deciding to move, but suddenly we were outside. Me and Aunt Mira and the fourth guy who'd stayed frozen in his chair the whole time. The lot felt colder than it had any right to. There were no footprints leading in, no scuff marks, no sign of anybody. The music faded like someone walking away down a long corridor, and the shapes thinned out, losing their edges until they were just fog. Then even the fog was gone. We called the police. Of course we did. There were searches. Dogs, flashlights, people shouting their names. Statements, questions, suspicion. You can imagine how it went. What do you mean they disappeared in a fog? Were they drinking? Are you sure they left the house? On and on. For a long time after, I caught myself wondering if I'd just snapped. If we all had some kind of shared breakdown. But you know what? Shared hallucinations don't erase people's phone numbers from your life. They don't stop someone from ever posting again, ever making another call, ever walking through your door. Nothing turned up. No bodies. No footprints past the lot. No camera footage of them leaving the street. Just nothing. Years have passed since that night. I moved away eventually, but I still visit sometimes. Aunt Mira's older now, more fragile, but she still makes too much tea and presses food into my hands when I go. She stared out the same window we'd stood at that night. Since I was younger than you, she said. Sometimes they come. Different years, different months, always with the mist, always with the music, always the same bride and groom, never growing older. They dance, and if someone steps too close, the circle opens. I swallowed. Why didn't you move? She gave this tired little smile. You think they stay only with the land? They follow the blood. My mother used to say we live under their promise, so I keep my lights on. I keep my house full when I can. She looked at me then. It is better to watch them from behind glass than to be watched from inside the ring. She told me that on some nights she still hears the drums. Sometimes she looks out and there are more figures than before, the circle thicker. People she doesn't recognize. And every now and then, she says, she sees familiar faces in that crowd. I didn't want to ask, but I did. Have you seen them? Jonah and Lila? She nodded once, slow. They stand near the edge, she said. They look happy, if you only look quick. Like photos. But their eyes do not move. Their smiles do not reach anywhere. I didn't sleep well for weeks after that. Look, I know how this sounds. Spirits, cursed weddings, disappearing in fog. It all sounds like something somebody made up for a late-night radio show. I don't blame you if your first instinct is to explain it away. I used to be that person. Ghost stories were just stories. Creepy fun, nothing more. I'm not that person anymore. I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know what took my friends or where they went. I don't know why some old promise or ritual or tragedy keeps replaying itself behind my neighbor's house. All I know is this. If you're ever up late and you hear distant music that doesn't sound like it's coming from anywhere sensible, real drums, real strings, voices humming along, and you look outside and there's a low, slow fog that wasn't there a minute ago, do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Don't be clever. Don't go prove it's nothing. Just lock the door. Stay inside.